Hello story enthusiasts. Welcome to Harryverse X. Today we venture into, what if Odin and Frigg raised Harry as Thor's brother and Asgard made him immortal god of thunder and magic. Your support means everything, like and subscribe. Enjoy. Chapter 1, The lightning-marked sun. The night Voldemort came to Godric's Hollow, the sky over every realm cracked. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. The sky cracked, a sound like the universe clearing its throat, a resonance that traveled through the branches of Yggdrasil the way a plucked string carries its note through wood and air and bone. In Asgard, drinking horns trembled on feast tables. In Midgard, dogs howled without knowing why. In the depths of his throne room, Odin Allfather opened his one good eye and sat very, very still. He had been watching the Potter family for 3 years. Not obsessively. Not with the hungry attention of a man awaiting a transaction. More the way a careful gardener watches a particular plant, checking in, noting growth, aware that something about it was different from the others without yet being able to name why. It was the boy, mostly. Children radiated magic the way forge fires radiated heat, and most children's magic was warm and orange and ordinary. The Potter boy's magic was the color of lightning. Blue-white at the edges, gold at the core, and underneath both colors, something ancient. Something that predated Hogwarts. Something that predated wizards entirely. Odin had recognized it the way you recognize a word in a foreign language you haven't spoken in 1,000 years. Slow. Then all at once. He was watching through the all-sight when the green light flashed. He watched James Potter die on his feet, wand out, facing something he couldn't stop. He watched Lily Potter make a choice that was not a spell and not a charm and not anything Dumbledore's books would ever fully explain, a choice so pure and so absolute that it rewrote the rules of something older than magic. He watched the curse rebound. He watched the ceiling fall. He watched a 1-year-old boy sit in the rubble with a bleeding forehead and eyes like his mother's and a soul that was now burning so brightly it was nearly unbearable to look at directly. He watched Hagrid arrive. He watched the plan form, Surrey, a doorstep, Desley's, and something in Odin's chest, that old scarred thing he rarely acknowledged, pulled tight. He closed his eye. Then he stood, and he called for Sleipnir, and he rode. Frigg was already at the cradle by the time Odin returned to Asgard. She had known before he'd left, she always knew, which was something Odin had spent centuries pretending not to find humbling. She stood in the antechamber off the main hall, in the warm amber light of a dozen candles, looking down at the bundle Odin had set carefully on the stone bench. The child was asleep. His forehead had been cleaned and wrapped with a strip of white cloth, but the cut beneath it would leave a scar. Frigg had already determined this with the gentle certainty of someone who had healed enough wounds to know which ones chose to stay. His parents, she asked. Gone. Frigg touched the boy's cheek with one finger, very lightly. He looks like his mother. He has his father's hands. She glanced up at him. In all the years Odin had known her, and they were years in the way mountains were tall, incomprehensibly accumulated, he had never found a way to lie to her face. He didn't try now. His magic, Odin said. You felt it when I brought him through. The whole bridge felt it. She straightened, folding her hands. Heimdall nearly dropped his sword. There is something in his blood that is ours, Frigg. Not human wizardry. Something older. Something that remembers Asgard. And the scar. Odin was quiet for a moment. Outside the antechamber, he could hear the distant sounds of the feast hall, laughter, the clatter of cups, Thor's voice raised above everyone else's in the middle of some story that was probably 70% fabrication. Normal. Safe. The world as it should be. There is dark magic in it, he said. Old. Hungry. A piece of something broken and terrible lodged there like a splinter. He paused. It can be managed. Contained. And in time, Frigg said, you will need to tell him. Yes. Everything. Yes, Frigg. She looked at him for a long moment with those grey eyes that had watched civilizations rise and burn and be forgotten. Then she looked back at the sleeping boy, and something in her face softened in a way it only did for her sons. "Then we will raise him," she said. "And we will do it properly." From somewhere down the corridor, a door burst open with the tremendous enthusiasm of someone who had absolutely been told not to run in the halls and had decided that suggestion was for other people. Thor arrived in the doorway, 7 years old, golden-haired, already broad in the shoulders in the way that promised he would one day be enormous, and stopped so abruptly he nearly fell over. He stared at the baby. "What is that?" "Your brother," Frigg said. Thor stared at her. Then at Odin. Then at the baby again, with the deep suspicious scrutiny of a child who is trying to determine if he is being tricked. "He's very small," Thor said finally. "You were also small," Odin said. Briefly. Thor crept forward with the exaggerated caution of someone who has been told many times not to touch fragile things and is trying to demonstrate, via slow movement, that they are being extremely responsible. He peered over the edge of the bench at the sleeping child. The baby, as if sensing the attention, stirred and opened his eyes, and they were green, startlingly green, green like the first leaves of spring after a hard Asgardian winter. Thor's expression, which had been cycling rapidly through suspicious, cautious, and uncertain, landed suddenly and completely on delighted. "He looked at me," Thor said. "Yes," Frigg agreed. "He chose to look at me." "You are quite loud," Odin said. "It was probably involuntary." Thor ignored this. He reached out one careful, blunt-fingered hand and let the baby grab onto his thumb, which babies do instinctively and which Thor clearly interpreted as a formal declaration of allegiance. He looked up at his parents with an expression of complete certainty. "I'll protect him," Thor announced. "From everything." Frigg hid her smile. Odin didn't bother. "That," Odin said, "is exactly what I'm afraid of." They named him Haraldur. Harry, for the everyday, the name his mother had called him in the brief year they'd had together, preserved like something pressed between the pages of a book. Haraldur Odinson for the rest, for the feasts and the ceremonies and the formal occasions where names carried weight. He grew up answering to both without confusion, which seemed to suit him perfectly. He was always two things at once. He was 4 years old when he first made lightning. It wasn't intentional. He'd been chasing Thor through the upper gardens. Thor was 11 by then, long-legged and annoyingly fast, and Harry had tripped on a root and gone down hard on both palms, and the frustration had come up through him like a wave, and then the sky had opened up and sent a bolt slamming into the garden wall 3 feet from Thor's head. Thor had frozen. Then he'd turned around very slowly and looked at his little brother sitting in the dirt with his palms smoking faintly and an expression of profound surprise on his face. "That," Thor said, pointing at him, "was amazing." Harry looked at his hands. "I didn't mean to." "Do it again." "Thor, do it again." Harry had tried. Nothing happened for a long moment, and then a small crackling bolt leapt from his fingertip to the garden wall and left a scorch mark the size of a handprint. Both boys stared at it. Then they looked at each other. Then, with the perfect synchronization of brothers who are about to do something they will absolutely be in trouble for later, they grinned. Frigg found them an hour later. The garden wall had 17 scorch marks on it. Harry had a burned hole in his sleeve and soot on his forehead. Thor was trying to teach him to throw a bolt properly, which Thor had defined as horizontally and with conviction. Frigg stood in the garden entrance, looked at the wall, looked at her sons, and said, "I see." It was Thor's idea, Harry said immediately. He hit the wall on his own first, Thor said, with the earnest conviction of someone who believes this is a meaningful distinction. "Inside," Frigg said. "Both of you." "Harry, I'll take a look at that sleeve." She wasn't angry. That was the thing about Frigg that Harry understood young and never forgot. She didn't rage, she didn't punish in the cold controlled way some of the Asgardian nobles did, the ones who had confused severity with authority. She sat him down at the long wooden table in her workroom and healed the burn on his arm, and while she worked, she talked to him about what he'd done. Not scolding. Explaining. What magic was. Where it came from. How it lived inside people, wizards, sorcerers, Asgardians, like a language the body spoke before the mouth learned words. You have two kinds, she said, wrapping his arm. Most people have one. You have the wizardry you were born with, your mother's gift, partly, and something older in your blood. And you have the affinity for storm that you've drawn from Asgard. Like Thor? Harry asked. Different from Thor. She smoothed the bandage and looked at him directly, which was how Frigg always said this is important. Thor's power is his by birthright. What you have is something Asgard gave you because you were ready to receive it. Because the realm recognized something in you. She paused. That matters, Harry. It means the power is yours. But it also means you have a responsibility to it. Harry was 4, but he had been raised in Asgard, which meant he understood weight when it was placed on him. Okay, he said. Frigg searched his face. Okay. I'll be responsible to it, he said. And then, because he was still 4, can Thor teach me to throw it horizontally? Frigg closed her eyes very briefly. Yes, she said. After dinner. The years went by the way years do in Asgard, slowly by the calendar, quickly in memory. Thor taught Harry everything he knew about combat, which was considerable and enthusiastic and occasionally resulted in broken things that they agreed never to mention. They sparred in the training yards from the time Harry was old enough to hold a practice blade. Thor was always bigger and always stronger, and he never, not once, used either advantage to coast. He fought Harry like he was training a warrior, which he was, and he lost to him sometimes in the way that older brothers occasionally lose, not entirely on purpose, but not entirely by accident either. Odin taught Harry strategy, history, and patience, 3 things he had varying degrees of natural aptitude for. Strategy came easily. Harry had a lateral mind, the kind that found the angle other people weren't looking at. History came in waves, fast when it interested him and grudging when it didn't. Patience was an ongoing negotiation. You are not listening, Odin said one afternoon when Harry was 9, bent over a map of the 9 realms with his chin in his hands and his eyes glazed. I am, Harry said. You were saying that the Vanir-Aesir War established the precedent for the current boundary treaties, which is fascinating, and I have retained all of it. You were thinking about the bolt you almost hit the training dummy with this morning. Harry looked up. How do you do that? All-Father, Odin said, as if this answered everything. That's not an answer. It is the only answer you need. Odin leaned forward. The bolt. What went wrong? Harry sat up, because this was actually interesting. The wind shifted right as I released. I was compensating for the dummy's position and didn't account for air movement. I think if I create a contained charge first, build it tighter before release, I can control the direction more precisely regardless of wind. Odin nodded slowly. Show me tomorrow. Harry grinned. See, this is why I prefer practical lessons. This is why you will eventually be grateful for the theoretical ones. But there was something in the old man's face that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite not one either. Frigg was the one who taught him magic. Real magic, Asgardian sorcery, which was older and stranger and structurally more honest than the wand-waving of the wizarding world. It didn't require props. It required understanding, an honest reckoning with what you wanted, what it would cost, and what you were willing to give. Harry took to it like water finding a slope. Naturally, quickly, almost frighteningly well. You're doing it again, Frigg said one afternoon when Harry was 10. He'd been practicing a containment weave and had, without particularly trying, produced something that should have taken a dedicated student 5 years to master. What am I doing? Exceeding expectations. Harry considered this. Is that bad? No. She studied him with that careful gray gaze. But it means we need to go further than I planned. She paused. There is a form of ancient magic that your mother used the night she died. You know that? Yes. Harry's voice was even. He'd known about his parents since he was 7, told by Odin in that direct, unornamented way that Odin delivered everything, with the quiet addition that knowing didn't make it something to fall apart over. He'd cried, once, alone, in the upper gardens, and then he'd put it in the part of himself where he kept things that were real and important and not to be wasted on prolonged grieving. What she did is called sacrificial magic, Frigg said. The oldest kind. It works on the principle that love, real love, freely given, absolute, creates a protection that dark magic cannot breach. Most magical scholars consider it theoretical. Your mother proved otherwise. It's why Voldemort's curse bounced, Harry said. Yes. But there's more to it. Frigg looked at the scar on his forehead, the lightning bolt shape that had been there since the beginning, pale silver now rather than angry red. The magic didn't just protect you. It marked you. Bound something to you. She was quiet for a moment. Your father, Odin, and I have been discussing when to tell you. Harry waited. There is a fragment of Voldemort's soul in your scar, Harry. The afternoon light through the workroom window made patterns on the floor. Harry looked at them for a moment. He was 10. He understood what a soul was. In Asgard, soul magic was serious business, discussed seriously, not hedged around with euphemism. So I'm carrying a piece of him, Harry said. Yes. Can it be removed? In time. When you are strong enough that removing it will not damage you. She met his eyes. Your father believes it explains the depth of your connection to ancient magic. The dark fragment has, in a way, been feeding you power it doesn't know it's giving. Accelerating your affinity. Harry sat with this for a long moment. Then, okay. Frigg tilted her head. That is the second time in your life you have said okay to something that should take considerably longer to process. What's the alternative? Being upset about it? Harry shrugged, a quick sharp movement, the only thing that betrayed that it wasn't quite as easy as he made it sound. I'll learn to be strong enough to remove it. Then I will. He looked up. Teach me. Frigg looked at him for a long moment with something in her face that she rarely showed, not the warm motherly pride she wore easily, but something deeper and fiercer than that. Yes, she said. I will. Loki watched all of this with interest. He was 17 years older than Harry, a gulf that, in Asgard's long timescale, was not so very wide, but in practical terms meant he had been a fully formed person with complicated opinions before Harry arrived. He had never been actively unkind to the boy. He was, rather, precise about him, watching, cataloging, noting things with the particular attention of someone who finds an unexpected variable in a calculation they thought was complete. Harry reminded Loki of himself, which was a disconcerting thing to admit. Not on the surface, Harry was warm in a way Loki was not, open in a way Loki had stopped being a long time ago. But underneath, in the structural way they both processed the world, the lateral thinking, the instinct to find the angle others missed, the ability to hold two contradictory things inside themselves without needing to resolve the contradiction, there was a resemblance that Loki found alternately annoying and oddly comforting. When Harry was 11, Loki cornered him in the library. Harry was reading something Asgardian and old, cross-referencing it with a piece of parchment covered in his own cramped notes, and he didn't look up when Loki settled into the chair across from him. You already know what I'm going to say, Loki said. You're going to ask if I'm really as fine with the soul fragment business as I appear to be, Harry said, still not looking up. Loki paused. Yes. Harry closed the book, put down his quill, and looked at his brother. The word was right, Harry thought, they were all his brothers, in the chaotic, complicated, specific way that family was family. No, he said. I'm not entirely fine with it. It's strange and dark and I don't like knowing there's a piece of a dead dark wizard living in my head. He said this calmly, the way someone describes weather. But being not fine with it doesn't change what it is or what needs to be done about it. So. Loki studied him. Most people would be undone by that. Most people haven't grown up here. Harry's mouth curved slightly. You're also carrying things you don't love carrying. Does it undo you? Loki went very still for a moment. Then, in a voice that gave away nothing except that it was extremely controlled, that is not the same. Isn't it? They stared at each other across the library table. Outside, they could hear Thor in the courtyard, apparently engaged in a fight that was going very well based on his volume. You're annoying, Loki said. You keep coming to talk to me, Harry pointed out. I'm cataloging your development. It's intellectually interesting. Sure. Harry picked up his book again. Loki. When I go to the wizarding school, when I deal with whatever's left of Voldemort, I'm going to need someone who thinks like he does. Not just someone who fights better. Someone who thinks sideways. He didn't look up. I think that's you. The silence stretched for long enough that Harry looked up again, and found Loki's expression doing something complicated that he was clearly trying to prevent it from doing. I'll consider it, Loki said. He left. Harry went back to his book. He was smiling. The decision to go to Hogwarts was made when Harry was 11, in a meeting in Odin's throne room that was considerably louder than Odin's throne room meetings usually were. It makes sense, Harry said, standing before the throne with his hands in his pockets, which Odin had long since given up trying to discourage during informal sessions. Voldemort isn't dead. He's diminished, but not gone, we both know that. Whatever he's doing in the wizarding world, he's doing it there, not here. I need to be there. You are 11, Odin said. And already more dangerous than anyone at that school. Harry said it without arrogance, just as a fact, the way you state the weather. I'm not going because I need the education. I'm going because that's where the problem is. And because I want to know where I came from. The wizarding part. A pause. Both of my families deserve attention. Thor, standing to Harry's left with his arms crossed and a look on his face like a man being asked to approve a plan he loves and hates in equal measure, said, I don't like it. I know. There are people there who will want to use you. Dumbledore had plans for me when I was an infant, Harry said. Those plans are no longer relevant. I'll deal with Dumbledore. You're 11, Thor repeated. You said that already. I'll say it many more times. Odin watched his youngest son with that deep considering look that had been trained on warlords and kings and the complicated machinery of fate for longer than most civilizations had existed. Harry stood under it without flinching, which most people didn't manage, and looked back with those green eyes that were always slightly too direct for comfort. You know about the scar, Odin said. About what's in it. And still you want to go into proximity with the one who put it there. I want to go into proximity with the problem so I can solve it, Harry said. The scar doesn't scare me, father. And Voldemort, he paused. Voldemort's just a man who was so afraid of death he turned himself into something less than alive to avoid it. I have exactly no patience for that. The throne room was quiet. Somewhere in the far distance, one of the Einherjar was drilling the new recruits and you could hear the rhythmic clash of it, steady and distant. Odin looked at Frigg, who was standing at his right and who had clearly already made her decision and was waiting, with her characteristic patience, for her husband to catch up. Very well, Odin said. Thor made a sound like a man in physical pain. However, Odin continued, you will not go as a child going to school. You will go as what you are. He leaned forward slightly. Asgard does not apologize for itself, Haraldur. And neither do you. Harry grinned, quick, warm, the kind of grin that lit up his entire face, that was so purely his it always caught people slightly off guard because it was nothing like Thor's broad beaming smile or Loki's sharp smirk. It was its own thing entirely. Wasn't planning to, he said. His letter arrived on his 11th birthday. Frigg had arranged for it, in the quiet efficient way she arranged many things, a word to the appropriate parties through the appropriate channels, a gentle suggestion that the Hogwarts owls knew where to find Haraldur Odinson. The owl that delivered it was enormous and white and deeply unimpressed with Asgard's decor. It landed on the feast table, deposited the letter, stole a piece of roasted boar, and left with its dignity entirely intact. Harry held the letter. Haraldur Odinson, the Golden Feast Hall, Asgard. The address was in different ink than the rest, like it had been added by someone who had spent a long moment deciding what to write and then committed. "Read it," Thor said, leaning over his shoulder. Harry broke the seal. The letter was exactly what it was supposed to be, formal, welcoming, listing required equipment and the date of departure. He read it twice, put it down, and picked up his cup. "Supply list," he said. "I'll need to go to Diagon Alley." "I'm coming," Thor said. "You absolutely are not." "I'm coming." "Thor, you can't just, I am your brother and I am coming." Harry looked at Frigg, who raised her hands in a gesture that meant this is between you and your brother and I am diplomatically elsewhere. "Fine," Harry said. "But you're wearing Midgardian clothes and you're not hitting anyone." "I make no promises about the second condition." "Thor. Probably not hitting anyone." Harry put his head in his hands. From across the table, Loki, who had not said a word this entire time, quietly raised his cup. They went to Diagon Alley on a clear September morning 3 weeks before term. Frigg had arranged documentation, the wizarding world had its own bureaucratic logic about identity and lineage, and Harry Potter existed in their records as the son of James and Lily, even if Harry Odinson existed in all practical reality as something rather different. He carried both names the way he carried his 2 kinds of magic, comfortably, without contradiction. Diagon Alley hit him like a wall of sound and color and something else, something he recognized from Frigg's descriptions of wizarding magic, a dense, layered, cheerful cacophony of magical energy that was entirely different from Asgard's deep resonant power. This was quick and bright and slightly chaotic. He liked it immediately. Thor was wearing Midgardian clothes, jeans, a shirt that was straining at the shoulders, and an expression of tremendous goodwill toward everyone in his immediate vicinity, and he was drawing stares, but that was Thor in any context. Harry drew different stares. He didn't notice at first. He was reading the signs on the shop windows, getting his bearings, mapping the layout. Then he noticed the quiet that moved ahead of him. The way people's heads turned. The way a cluster of witches near Flourish and Blots went very still and one of them pressed her hand to her mouth. Harry stopped walking. "They know who I am?" he asked Thor quietly. "The scar," Thor said, equally quiet, losing the broad smile for a moment. "The lightning bolt. They've been looking for it for 10 years. Harry looked down at his forehead. He'd never given the scar much thought as a symbol, in Asgard it was just a part of his face, familiar as his own eyes. Here, apparently, it was something else. "Harry Potter," someone breathed nearby. He didn't see who. He turned back to the shops. "Right," he said. "Let's get the books first. I want to see what they think is worth teaching." Ollivander's was the last stop, because Harry had saved it deliberately. He didn't need a wand. He'd never used a wand, Asgardian magic didn't require them, and his storm affinity was as natural to him as breathing. But wizarding magic, the kind he'd been born with, the kind that lived in his blood from his parents, worked differently, and he was curious about it. He wanted to know what both kinds of magic felt like, what they could do together, what the intersection of them might produce. Ollivander himself was a small, silver-haired, silver-eyed man who seemed to exist in a state of permanent mild enchantment. He took one look at Harry and went very quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "Haraldur Odinson," he said, as if tasting the name. "Or Harry Potter, as was." "Either works," Harry said. Ollivander looked at the scar. He looked at Harry's eyes. He looked at the way Harry was standing, probably. There was a stillness to him that most 11-year-olds didn't have, a quality of being entirely present, entirely unrushed. "I have been wondering," Ollivander said, for 10 years, what wand would suit you. I confess I did not expect to find out. He moved into the racks without further ceremony. Try this one first. 11 inches, holly, phoenix feather. Harry took it. The moment his fingers closed around it, something happened that he'd never felt before, a warmth that was entirely different from Asgardian magic, more concentrated, more specifically directed, like a river that has found its channel. He raised it slightly and a stream of gold sparks poured from the tip without him particularly trying. Ollivander stared at it. Curious, he said. Very curious. The phoenix whose feather this contains, Harry said, because he could feel it, the way he could feel the mood of a storm, gave only 2 feathers. Didn't it? Ollivander looked at him. The other is in the wand that gave me this scar, Harry said. He put the wand on the counter. He kept his voice entirely conversational. I'll take it. You're not, most customers try several, this one's mine. He picked it up again and felt it again, that river channel warmth, that directed clarity, his mother's kind of magic finally finding its form. I can feel it. Ollivander wrapped it in silence. As Harry was leaving, the old wand-maker said, very quietly, be careful, Mr. Potter. Or Mr. Odinson. The power you carry, is mine, Harry said pleasantly. All of it. Cheerful day to you. Thor was waiting outside with the books and a meat pie he'd acquired from somewhere. He held out half. Harry took it. Well? Thor asked. Harry held up the wand. A small bolt of lightning ran down its length, meeting the holly wood, and the result was a sound like a struck bell, clear and high and carrying. A few nearby witches turned. Harry pocketed it. Let's go home, he said. His last night in Asgard before term, Odin came to find him. Harry was in the upper gardens, sitting on the wall where he'd made his first lightning bolts, watching the lights of Asgard spread below him. The realm was beautiful at night, all gold and deep blue, like something out of a story, which it sort of was. He'd grown up in a story. He was about to walk into a different one. Odin sat beside him on the wall. Not on a throne. Just sitting. He did that sometimes, when it was just the two of them, set down the performance of being the All-Father and was just an old man with too much history sitting next to his son. Questions? Odin asked. Always. Harry looked out over the lights. Am I going to find Voldemort there? Already? This year? Something of him. A remnant. Odin paused. The stone of the philosopher is at the school. Someone will try to use it to restore what was lost. You will need to stop them. Harry nodded slowly. This was new information, delivered the way Odin delivered all tactical information, directly, without cushioning. He appreciated it. Okay. The headmaster, Dumbledore, will see you as an asset. Perhaps as a weapon. He will not say so. I know. There is a boy, Neville Longbottom, whom the wizarding world has declared the boy who lived. Voldemort also marked him. I know. I read about Neville. Harry paused. He and I should be allies. He carries the public weight of that title. I have no interest in it. Odin made a sound that was probably approval. And the soul fragment. Still there, Harry said evenly. Still contained. Frigg's enchantment is holding. When the time is right, we will deal with it together. Yes. Harry was quiet for a moment. Father. Yes. When you chose to take me that night, he stopped. Started again. You didn't have to. Dumbledore had a plan for me. I would have been somewhere safe. Odin was quiet for a moment. You would have been alive, he said. That is not the same as safe. And it is not the same as home. Harry looked at him. You had a mother's magic written into you so deeply it remade the rules of the universe, Odin said, and a soul that burned so brightly it lit up every realm it passed through. Leaving that on a doorstep in Surrey was, he stopped, which was notable. Odin rarely stopped mid-sentence. No. I could not do it. Harry held that for a moment. The lights of Asgard spread below them, warm and gold. His home. Both of his homes. Okay, Harry said. For the third time in his life. Odin's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close enough. He put one heavy hand on Harry's shoulder, briefly, the way warriors embrace. Then he stood, and walked back inside, and was the All-Father again. Harry sat on the wall for a while longer, looking at the lights, and then he looked up at the sky, deep Asgardian blue, threaded with stars, and felt the storm charge that lived in him the way it always did, warm and ready and patient, and thought about Hogwarts, and Voldemort's remnant, and Dumbledore's plans, and the wand in his pocket that hummed when he held it, and he felt, on the whole, entirely ready. He jumped down from the wall. He went inside. He packed his trunk. Chapter 2, The Prince Arrives. The Hogwarts Express left from King's Cross at 11 o'clock on the 1st of September, which meant Harry had to be in London by 10:30, which meant Frigg had spent the previous evening engaged in a quiet but decisive battle with Thor over whether Thor was accompanying Harry to the platform. Thor had won. Obviously. He was standing on the Muggle side of King's Cross in the early September morning, wearing a jacket that Frigg had specifically selected because it didn't make him look like he'd been assembled from a different species, carrying Harry's trunk with one hand the way most people carry a briefcase. Harry walked beside him with his hands in his jacket pockets and his wand in his sleeve and the pleasant alert awareness of someone arriving somewhere new and finding it interesting. Platform 9 3/4, Harry said, reading the ticket. Through the barrier, Thor said. He'd been briefed. He'd read everything Frigg had given him with the focused intensity he brought to battle preparation, which was both impressive and slightly alarming. The pillar between 9 and 10. You walk through it. Yes. Into a wall. Into a wall. Thor looked at the wall in question. Midgardians, he said, with tremendous affection. They make everything complicated. Says the man who lives in a golden city accessible via a rainbow bridge. That is architecturally straightforward, Thor said, and walked through the barrier first, trunk and all, without breaking stride. Harry followed. The world shifted, the Muggle bustle of King's Cross replaced instantly by the roar of a scarlet steam engine and the dense, cheerful chaos of hundreds of wizarding families saying goodbye. The air tasted of coal smoke and something magical underneath, layered and alive. Harry stopped for a moment just on the other side of the barrier and took it in. It was exactly as loud as Diagon Alley, but different, more emotional, more in motion. Parents embracing children, owls complaining from cages, cats weaving between legs, older students reuniting with the particular volume of people who've been separated for months. All of it overlaid with that quick bright wizarding magic, dense as summer heat. He liked it. Thor was already drawing looks, he drew looks everywhere, it was practically a natural phenomenon, but Harry noticed the looks that found him specifically. The way they caught on the scar and then went very still. He'd expected it. He'd decided, at some point between Asgard and this platform, that he was not going to manage it or moderate it or angle himself so it was less visible. He was who he was. Let them look. Your trunk, Thor said, depositing it beside him. He looked around at the platform with the expression he wore in new places, genuinely interested, genuinely warm, as if everything and everyone deserved his attention. Then he looked at Harry. Right, Harry said. Right, Thor agreed. They stood there for a moment, brothers, on a platform between two worlds. Thor reached out and gripped the back of Harry's neck briefly, an Asgardian gesture, warrior to warrior, equal to equal, and let go. If anyone harms you, Thor said, pleasantly. I know, Harry said. I will not be pleasant about it. I know that too. Harry picked up his trunk. All right. You will write every 3 days or I will come here personally. Every week. Every 4 days. Fine. Harry started moving toward the train. Go home, Thor. I'll wait until it leaves, Thor said, not moving. Harry didn't argue. He found an empty compartment midway down the train, stowed his trunk, settled in, and looked out the window. Thor was visible on the platform, standing still in the moving crowd like a boulder in a river, watching the train with his arms crossed and an expression that was trying to be stern and not quite managing it. Harry raised one hand. Thor raised his in return. The whistle blew. The compartment stayed empty for about 20 minutes, which Harry spent reading. He brought one of Frigg's texts on ancient magical theory, the kind of book that didn't exist in any wizarding library, and he was deep into a passage about the convergence of elemental and enchantment-based magics when the door slid open. A girl came in. Bushy brown hair, alert brown eyes, a book tucked under one arm and a cat tucked under the other. She looked at the compartment, looked at Harry, and said, with the directness of someone who has determined that small talk is inefficient, "Is it all right if I sit here? Everywhere else is full or there are boys throwing things at each other." "Sit wherever you like," Harry said. She settled in across from him, put the cat, orange, enormous, expressing mild contempt for everything, on the seat beside her, and opened her book. Harry went back to his. They read in companionable silence for several minutes. "You're Harry Potter," she said without looking up. "Among other things," Harry said. She looked up now. "What other things?" He considered her. She had the look of someone who had grown up outside magic and come to it with a scholar's appetite. She wanted to understand it completely, properly, from the ground up, and she was slightly impatient with people who didn't share this priority. He recognized the type because Frigg was the type. He found it refreshing. "Haraldur Odinson," he said. "Harry's fine." She blinked. "Odinson. That's not a wizarding family name." "No. You're not. I read everything I could find, and the books say you disappeared. No one knew where you went." She was leaning forward slightly now, the book forgotten. "Where did you go?" "Asgard," Harry said. She stared at him for a long moment. She started, and then stopped, and then started again with the discipline of someone deciding not to dismiss something just because it's unexpected. "That's not in Hogwarts, a history. Most things aren't." "Are you serious?" "Completely." She sat back. She was processing, Harry could almost see it, the rapid reorganization of frameworks, the filing of new information. "Then, Hermione Granger," she said, extending her hand. "Muggle-born. First year. Harry Odinson. First year. Son of two worlds." He shook it. Hermione Granger looked at him for a moment with those sharp brown eyes, and then she smiled, genuinely, without the nervous performance of someone meeting the boy who lived. "You said among other things," she said. "What other things, exactly?" So he told her. Not everything, not the soul fragment, not the philosopher's stone, but enough. Asgard, Frigg and Odin and Thor and Loki, the storm magic and the wand magic and how they were different and where they overlapped. Hermione listened with a quality of attention that was almost physical, leaning forward slightly, asking questions when his explanations left gaps, never just accepting a claim when she could understand the mechanism behind it. By the time the lunch trolley came around, they were deep into a discussion about whether Asgardian sorcery and wizarding transfiguration shared a theoretical root, and Hermione had produced a notebook from her bag and was writing things down. "You're going to be very annoying in class," Harry told her. "I prefer thorough," she said, not looking up from the notebook. "I didn't say it was bad." She looked up. "Most people mean it badly." "I grew up with a god of mischief," Harry said. "I have a high tolerance for people who are sharper than the room." Hermione considered this. "I think I'm going to like Asgard," she said. "You've never been there." "I know. I think I'd like it." The compartment door opened. Two boys fell through it, one in a state of genuine distress, one clearly attached to the first. The one in distress was round-faced, anxious, with a toad clutched to his chest and the look of someone who has been having a difficult day since approximately 6 in the morning. The other had a kind face and freckles. "Have you seen a toad?" the round-faced one asked. "I've lost my toad." "I have a toad right here," he added, then looked at the toad he was holding, then back at them. "I mean, another toad." "No. I'm sorry." He started to back out. "Neville," Harry said. The boy stopped. "How do you match the description," Harry said. He'd researched, because it seemed relevant. "Neville Longbottom. Come in." "Shut the door." Neville Longbottom came in with the uncertain movement of someone who expects the invitation to be rescinded. He sat across from Harry, toad in hand, and looked at him with an expression Harry couldn't immediately categorize. "You're Harry Potter," Neville said. "Yes. Neville stopped. "I'm Neville. Obviously." "Ron Weasley," the freckled boy said, dropping into the seat beside Neville. He was looking at Harry with the wide-eyed intensity of someone trying to decide whether to be in awe or just to be normal. Apparently deciding on normal with some effort. "The scar's real, then." "It is," Harry said. "Does it hurt?" "No." Ron nodded. This seemed to satisfy him in a basic way. "Good. You're not what I expected. The stories are mad. Everyone says you were, I don't know, hidden somewhere. Protected." "I was in Asgard," Harry said, and watched their faces process that. Ron's face processed it by going very still and then saying, "Blimey," in a tone that encompassed quite a lot. Neville's face processed it differently. Carefully. He was looking at Harry's scar and then at his own hand, which Harry knew, from the research, from Odin's briefing, had a faint mark on it from the same night. Voldemort had considered both of them. Had reached a decision about one over the other. Neville had been the public face of that choice for 10 years. "You know," Neville said quietly, "what people say. About me. About that night." "Yes," Harry said simply. "And you don't." Neville seemed to be searching for the right version of something he'd probably been worried about for a long time. "You're not angry? That they called it me? That I got the title, or whatever it is?" Harry looked at him steadily. "Neville. I grew up in Asgard, son of Odin and Frigg, brother to Thor and Loki. I have exactly no desire for a title that was born from the worst night of two people's lives." He paused. "What happened that night matters. What we do about Voldemort matters. The title can be yours, and welcome to it." Neville stared at him. Then something in his face that had been held very carefully for a very long time loosened, just slightly. "Not all the way. But slightly." "Okay," Neville said. "Come and find me at Hogwarts," Harry said. "If you want." Ron was looking between them with the expression of someone watching something important happen and being smart enough to stay quiet about it. Harry revised his initial read of Ron Weasley upward. The castle appeared through the boat's bow waves in the dying light of a September evening, and Harry, who had grown up in Asgard and was genuinely difficult to impress architecturally, felt something move through him at the sight of it. Not awe, exactly. More recognition, the deep, wordless acknowledgement that this place was real in the way that mattered. Hundreds of years of magic soaked into stone. The warm yellow light in 1,000 windows. The sense of the place reaching back through time like roots, anchored, permanent, alive in the way that buildings can be alive when enough human experience has been lived within them. Hermione, in the boat beside him, was looking up at it with her hands clasped in her lap and her expression stripped entirely of her usual brisk composure. "It's real," she said softly. "Not to anyone in particular." "Yes," Harry agreed. It was the right answer for her. She straightened, smoothed her robes, and returned to looking competent. But he'd seen it, that moment of pure uncomplicated wonder, and he thought it was one of the most honest things he'd seen since arriving in the wizarding world. The entrance hall hit them in a wave of warmth and candlelight, and then Professor McGonagall, sharp, precise, entirely unintimidated by a hall full of 11-year-olds, which Harry respected, gave them the brief, brisk explanation of the 4 houses. Harry listened without much riding on the outcome. He had no preference. He'd been sorted into a family years ago. This was an administrative process. The sorting hat was an interesting object. The moment it settled on his head, Harry felt something, a presence, old and observant, moving through the upper reaches of his mind with the careful respect of someone who has been told not to touch anything. "My," the hat said inside his skull. "That is a great deal of magic for one head to contain. Occupational hazard. You could be in any of the 4 houses, you know. You have the courage of Gryffindor, the wit of Ravenclaw, the ambition of Slytherin, I know. Most students argue with me. I'm not arguing. Put me where you think." A pause. The hat considered. "Gryffindor suits the surface of you. But there's something deeper. You're here for a reason, a specific one, and the house that will bring you closest to what matters. Where," Harry said simply, "will I do the most good?" "Gryffindor," the hat announced. The table erupted. Harry stood, took the hat off, handed it back, and walked to the Gryffindor table, aware of the weight of eyes, every student in the hall, all of them, tracking him the way people track something that has come from outside their known world and will not behave according to the expected rules. Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor shortly after, practically before the hat touched her hair, which she looked quietly thrilled about. She sat beside Harry with the air of someone who has decided where they're sitting for the next 7 years. Neville came to Gryffindor too, to a warm welcome that was clearly built on 10 years of everyone knowing his name. Ron Weasley followed, to the enthusiastic thundering of what appeared to be 3 or 4 older brothers who were going to be genuinely insufferable about it. Harry ate. He listened. He observed. He noticed the pale blonde boy at the Slytherin table, Draco Malfoy, who he'd seen briefly in Diagon Alley when Malfoy had been holding forth to some friends about blood status and apparently hadn't noticed Harry because Harry hadn't been wearing his Hogwarts robes yet. Malfoy was looking at him now with an expression that was trying to be cold and evaluating and was slightly undermined by the fact that he couldn't entirely stop staring. Harry met his eyes across the hall, evenly. Malfoy looked away first. He noticed the professors, McGonagall brisk and watchful at one end of the table, Flitwick small and bright-eyed, Sprout comfortable in her own competence, Quirrell in a ridiculous turban who kept glancing at Harry with an anxiety that was too specific and too loaded to be general nervousness. Harry filed that one away. And at the center of the high table, Albus Dumbledore. Older than Harry had expected from the written records, though that was irrational, he'd known the man's age. Ancient, in the Midgardian way rather than the Asgardian one, which was different. The kind of old that carries stories. Long silver beard, half-moon glasses, robes of deep blue, and eyes that were exactly as described, blue and bright and missing nothing. Those eyes found Harry's. Held them. Harry did not look away. Dumbledore held the look for a moment, and in it Harry could feel the edges of something, calculation, reassessment, the rapid revision of a plan that had just encountered an unexpected variable. He knew what Harry's arrival meant to the man. 11 years of careful positioning, of keeping the boy who lived sequestered and shaped, and then the boy shows up from Asgard. Harry smiled, pleasantly, across the length of the hall. Dumbledore, after a moment, smiled back. His was more complicated than Harry's. He came to Harry's dormitory the next morning. Not personally, a note, delivered by a school owl at breakfast, requesting Harry's presence in the headmaster's office at 10 o'clock. Harry pocketed it, finished his eggs, and told Hermione he'd be late to their first class. "Charms," she said, looking at the note. "You'll miss the introduction. I'll borrow your notes." She made a face that said she knew exactly why this was a reasonable arrangement for him and found it slightly unfair. "Don't be late for Transfiguration." "I won't." He found the headmaster's office on the first attempt, which the gargoyle guarding it seemed faintly surprised by. The password, Sherbet Lemon, had been on the note. He rode the rotating staircase up with his hands in his pockets and knocked once. "Come in, Harry." The office was extraordinary. Every surface covered in instruments that measured things, tracked things, remembered things. Portraits of previous headmasters observing from their frames with varying degrees of interest. A magnificent bird on a perch that was clearly a phoenix, watching Harry with the deep warm attention of a creature that recognizes something. And behind the desk, Dumbledore, with his hands folded and his eyes doing that careful, searching thing that had probably worked on every student he'd ever had in this room. Harry sat down, crossed one ankle over his knee, and waited. "You are not what I expected," Dumbledore said. "So I've been told. I had plans, of sorts, for your arrival at Hogwarts. Plans built on certain assumptions about who you would be and what you would need." The old man paused. Those assumptions were, it appears, rather comprehensively incorrect. "Yes," Harry agreed. Dumbledore looked at him over the half-moon glasses. "I wonder if you know how much that unsettles me." "I'd guess considerably," Harry said. "You're not used to pieces that don't go where you place them." A pause. Dumbledore's mouth curved slightly. "Blunt. Asgardian upbringing," Harry said. "We don't do subtext when directness is available." "And what do you know about my plans, exactly?" "Enough." Harry looked at him steadily. "You wanted to keep me sheltered. Controlled, though you wouldn't use that word. You wanted me to come to Hogwarts not knowing my own power, to depend on you for guidance, to be shaped into a specific kind of weapon against Voldemort." He kept his voice neutral. Not accusatory. Just factual. "It's a reasonable strategy when the piece you're working with is an ordinary child." "I'm not." Dumbledore was quiet for a moment. Outside the windows, Hogwarts spread in the morning light. "No," he said quietly. "You are not." He leaned back. "And I find I am not certain how to proceed with you." "Honestly would be a good start," Harry said. "Tell me what you know about the Philosopher's Stone in this castle. Tell me what you know about what's left of Voldemort. Stop positioning and just talk to me, because I already know most of it and a direct conversation will serve both of us better than a game." Dumbledore looked at him for a long time. The phoenix on the perch made a soft sound, not a cry, more a murmur, low and considering. "Fawkes likes you," Dumbledore said. "He doesn't like many people quickly." "I know what he is," Harry said. "His counterpart's feather is in my wand." "Yes." Dumbledore studied him. 11 years, Harry. I have been watching this world carefully for 11 years, keeping the stone safe, keeping Voldemort contained, or the remnant of him. I believe he will try for the stone this year. I have precautions in place." "Good precautions?" "I thought so." "They'll need to be better," Harry said. "I'll deal with him when he tries. He is dangerous, he is a fragment of a man wearing a borrowed body, sustained by dark magic and desperation," Harry said, and the casual certainty in his voice wasn't performance, it was just true, and he knew it. "I have trained for 11 years in Asgard. He is not the problem. He is a problem, and I will solve it." Dumbledore stared at him. Then, slowly, he sat back, and something changed in his expression, the calculation diminished and something more genuine came through, something that Harry suspected the man didn't show very often. "Tell me about Odin," Dumbledore said. Harry allowed himself a small smile. "Ask me something I want to answer." "What do you want to know about Voldemort?" "Everything," Harry said. "Start at the beginning." They talked for 2 hours. Harry was late for Transfiguration. McGonagall turned into a cat the moment he walked in and then turned back and said, "Mr. Odinson. You are 12 minutes late." "I was with the headmaster," Harry said. "That is the only acceptable reason. Sit." He sat beside Hermione, who slid her notes across without being asked. Harry glanced at them, absorbed the first-class framework in about 40 seconds, and then watched McGonagall demonstrate the match-to-needle transfiguration she was setting as the exercise. He did it on the first try. Without particular effort, he knew transfiguration's theoretical base from Frigg's lessons, and once you understood the theory, the practice was a matter of application. The match became a needle, perfect, sharp, complete. McGonagall stopped walking between desks. She looked at the needle. She looked at Harry. "Did you practice this over the summer?" she asked. "I've had 7 years of instruction in magical theory and transformation," Harry said. "Different system, same principles." McGonagall looked at him for a moment with an expression that was working hard to remain pedagogically neutral. "Well," she said, and moved on. Hermione's match became a needle 30 seconds later. She looked at Harry's and then at her own and then said, under her breath, "Is everything going to be like this?" "Probably," Harry said. "Sorry. Don't apologize for being capable," she said immediately, and went back to her notes. The defense against the dark arts classroom was last on Friday's schedule, and Harry had been looking forward to it the way you look forward to a card you know is being played. Quirrell met them at the door, thin, anxious, the turban vivid purple above a pale face, and Harry walked in and took the seat nearest the front without thinking too hard about whether that was strategic. It was strategic. Quirrell's lesson was painful. Nervous and halting and full of avoidance, everything gesturing toward the subject rather than addressing it. Harry sat through it with his chin in one hand, monitoring the pulse that came off Quirrell the way you monitor distant thunder. There was something under the surface. Something that coexisted with the thin, anxious man the way a snake coexists with the rock it hides beneath. After class, Quirrell said, "Mr. Odinson." A word. Harry stayed. Everyone else filtered out. Hermione, at the door, gave him a look that said "Tell me later" and left. Quirrell stood behind his desk and looked at Harry with those nervous eyes, and Harry sat on the desk at the front of the room and waited. "You are not what was expected," Quirrell said. "That's becoming something of a theme," Harry said. "What's under the turban?" Quirrell went very still. The air in the room changed, a drop in temperature, a thickening, the particular heaviness of dark magic condensing. Harry had felt it in Asgard when Odin had shown him examples of cursed objects, corrupted artifacts, pieces of things that had been broken against their nature. He recognized it. "I know what you are," Harry said, still sitting on the desk, still entirely relaxed. "And you know what I am." From beneath the turban, like something heard through water, a voice. Old. Dry. Furious and cold in the way that very deep things are cold. "Haraldur Odinson," it said. "Hello," Harry said pleasantly. "You are a child," the voice said. "A boy playing at godhood." "I'm a prince of Asgard with storm magic in my blood and 10 years of Frigg's sorcery in my bones," Harry said. "But sure, if it makes you feel better." He slid off the desk and stood. "I'm not going to fight you here. Quirrell doesn't deserve to have his classroom destroyed. But I want you to understand something." He looked at the turban, at the dark magic pulsing behind it, and let the Asgardian part of him surface, not the lightning, not yet, but the deep resonant warmth of it, the thing that made the air hum. "I know about the stone. I know what you want. And I will be there." The voice was silent for a long moment. "You are afraid," it said. "You hide it well. But you are afraid." Harry considered this honestly. He thought about the scar on his forehead and the soul fragment Frigg's enchantment contained. He thought about Lily Potter's choice on the worst night of 2 worlds. He thought about his father's hand on his shoulder in the upper gardens. "No," he said. "I'm really not." He picked up his bag, walked to the door, and paused. "Quirrell," he said, to the man rather than the thing sharing his body. "I'm sorry about this. It isn't your fault." He left. He found Hermione at the end of the corridor, waiting with her arms crossed and her notebook under her elbow. "Well?" she said. Voldemort's in the turban, Harry said. Hermione blinked. Right, she said, after a moment. I know. And you just talk to him, yes. She stared at him. Most people would be terrified. He wanted me to be, Harry said. Shall we go to dinner? I want to tell Neville about this. Hermione looked at him, and there was that quality she had, that rapid reorganization, frameworks shifting, new information being integrated with the relentless efficiency of a mind that refused to waste anything. And then she nodded, and fell into step beside him, and said, start from the beginning. All of it. What exactly did Dumbledore tell you this morning? Harry started talking. They walked down the corridor side by side, and outside the tall windows the grounds were green and gold in the evening light, and somewhere in the castle something ancient settled, recognizing the shape of what was coming. Harry walked through it without slowing. Chapter 3, Storm and Stone. October arrived at Hogwarts like a mood shift, the warmth of September bleeding out of the grounds overnight, the lake going dark and serious, the forest pressing closer in the mornings with its breath of damp earth and old leaves. The castle responded by becoming more itself, fires catching early in every hearth, the staircases moving with slightly more frequency as if restless, the portraits more talkative than usual. Harry had found his rhythm by the second week. It was not, he suspected, the rhythm anyone had anticipated for him. He was ahead in every class, not obnoxiously, not performing it, just genuinely ahead in the way that happens when you've had 10 years of better instruction than the curriculum offers. McGonagall had stopped being surprised by him and moved into something closer to cautious respect, which he found more satisfying than admiration. Flitwick had revised his lesson plans twice in response to Harry, which Harry had not intended and felt slightly guilty about until Flitwick told him cheerfully that he hadn't had this much fun teaching in 20 years. Snape was the interesting one. Potions was the class Harry had walked into with the least preparation. Asgard didn't do potions, it had tonics and alchemical preparations, but the wizarding tradition of precise, chemical, ingredient-led potion-making was its own specific discipline, and Harry had approached it the way he approached any new system, with genuine curiosity and no pretense of knowledge he didn't have. He was good at it. Not naturally, it was the one class where he had to actually try, where the first attempts were imperfect and required adjustment. He found this interesting rather than frustrating, which seemed to confuse Snape considerably. Severus Snape was difficult to read. He was cold to Harry in the particular way he was cold to students he expected to be arrogant, a preemptive frost, armored and deliberate. Harry didn't respond to it with either resentment or performance, and this seemed to create in Snape a kind of cautious, slightly irritated recalibration that expressed itself as occasional nearly neutral responses to questions that would have received cutting remarks in other mouths. "Your lacewing flies," Snape said one afternoon, in the third week of term, pausing beside Harry's cauldron. "Why did you add them early?" "The base was running 3 degrees too cool," Harry said, not looking up. Compensating with earlier introduction extends the extraction period and achieves the same result. A pause. That is not the method outlined in the text. No. But it works. A longer pause. Lose 5 points for deviation from the prescribed method. Fair enough, Harry said mildly. He heard Snape move away. He also heard, because Harry had sharp ears, the professor saying nothing, not the cutting additional remark he delivered to every other substandard deviation that day. He considered that a minor victory. Hermione, across the work table, had been watching this exchange with the focused attention she brought to everything. "He didn't take more points," she said quietly. "He noticed it worked," Harry said. "He hates you slightly less than he hates everyone else," she said. "I don't know how you did that. I didn't argue. I didn't perform. And I was actually right." Harry measured his salamander blood. He respects competence. He just doesn't know how to express it without losing the personality he's built around being unpleasant. Hermione looked at him. "That's remarkably charitable." "Loki was my brother growing up," Harry said. "I have extensive experience interpreting complicated people who express everything sideways. Hermione put this in the mental file she kept for Harry-related information that she was still processing, which was getting thick. She'd filled 2 notebooks in September. Neville had dinner with Harry every Thursday. It had started accidentally. They'd ended up at the same end of the Gryffindor table on a Thursday in the second week, and Neville had been upset about something Malfoy had said, and Harry had listened and then said several things that were not comforting in the traditional sense but were very direct and very useful, and Neville had looked at him afterward with the expression of someone who has just received something they didn't know they were missing. The next Thursday he'd sat down beside Harry without saying anything, and Harry had passed him the bread rolls, and they'd eaten dinner in the comfortable quiet of people who've agreed to keep each other company without making it complicated. Ron joined most Thursdays too, because Ron was, Harry had determined, a person of excellent instincts who found his way to good things when given the opportunity. Ron was funny and loyal and slightly chaotic and played chess with the kind of ruthless creativity that Harry genuinely respected. He was also deeply good at reading the mood of a room, which meant he knew when Harry wanted to talk and when Harry wanted to just exist near someone companionable, and he adjusted accordingly. The 4 of them, Harry, Hermione, Neville, Ron, had become a unit without formally deciding to be one. It happened the way these things happen in school, proximity and shared interest and the specific bond of people who have chosen each other rather than been assigned to each other. It was Ron who first noticed the troll. They were in the middle of the Halloween feast, the great hall transformed with floating candles and carved pumpkins the size of boulders, the dinner spectacular, the noise at maximum, when Professor Quirrell burst through the doors. Harry had been watching Quirrell all term with the careful attention of someone waiting for a specific move on a board. He'd told Dumbledore about the turban conversation. Dumbledore had listened without apparent surprise and said that he appreciated Harry's directness and that certain precautions had been taken, which Harry had interpreted as "I know and I'm handling it." He'd allowed this, for now, because Dumbledore's precautions around the stone were real and layered, and because whatever Quirrell was planning required the stone to be accessible, which it currently wasn't. But Quirrell's entrance tonight was not about the stone. His panic was genuine, which was notable. The fragment of Voldemort sharing his body was always controlled, always cold. The panic in Quirrell's face was the man's own. "Troll," Quirrell announced to the hall. "In the dungeon. Thought you should know." And then he fainted. The hall erupted. Dumbledore's voice cut through it with calm authority, sending students to their houses. Harry was already standing. "Hermione," he said. Hermione had gone pale. "She's in the girls' bathroom," she said. "There was a, Lavender said something and she went to cry and she's been in there all afternoon, show me." They went against the current of students moving toward Gryffindor Tower, Hermione leading, Ron and Neville right behind them. Harry registered the irony of 4 first-year students running toward a mountain troll and found it more invigorating than alarming. They smelled it before they heard it, the stench of something large and organic and very stupid, a compound of damp fur and old garbage that preceded it like a warning. Then they heard it, the heavy irregular boom of something too large for the corridor taking up all the available space. The bathroom door was in front of them. The troll was approximately 30 feet away and had not yet noticed them. Harry assessed, 12 feet tall, gray, carrying a club the size of a tree trunk, roughly the intelligence of a motivated cabbage. He pulled his wand. "Ron, Neville, get the door open," he said. "Get her out." "What are you?" Ron started. The troll turned. It saw Harry first, he was at the front, and opened its mouth in a sound that was more vibration than noise, low and resonant, the vocal output of something that communicated mostly by volume. Harry raised his wand and sent a bolt of electricity directly at it. Not lightning. Not the full storm, this was focused, controlled, the precise application of conducted current that Frigg had spent 3 years teaching him to produce on demand. It caught the troll in the chest, and the troll staggered back 2 full steps and sat down very hard against the wall, which cracked around it. Behind him, he heard the bathroom door open. A girl's voice, surprised, frightened, and Neville talking to her in the low steady tone he used when something needed to be calming. The troll was getting up. Harry cast again, this time with the wand in his right hand and his left hand adding the Asgardian current, the two magics moving together the way they always did when he pushed, layered, harmonized, louder than either was alone. The bolt was gold at the core and blue-white at the edges, and it picked the troll up off the floor and threw it into the opposite wall hard enough to leave an impression. It did not get up again. The corridor was very quiet. Harry lowered his wand. His heart rate, which had elevated slightly during the assessment, was already evening back out. He turned. Ron was standing in the bathroom doorway with his mouth open. Neville was beside a girl Harry hadn't met yet, Parvati Patil, he thought, or Lavender Brown, who was staring at him with enormous eyes. Hermione was in the doorway and she looked, not frightened, not awed, but focused in the way she got when she was processing something as fast as it was happening. And then there was a girl on the floor just inside the bathroom, brown-eyed, bushy-haired, tear-streaked, and she was looking at Harry with an expression he recognized because it was the same one Neville wore sometimes. The expression of someone who has been alone with something difficult for too long and has just been found. Wait. He looked again. He looked at Hermione. There are two of you, Harry said. Hermione stared at him. What? He looked between the Hermione standing in the doorway and the one sitting on the floor and laughed, a genuine startled sound. You're identical. The girl on the floor made an indignant noise and scrambled upright. We are not. I'm Hermione Granger. Who are you? She's also Hermione Granger, Harry told the girl on the floor, pointing at the doorway. The two Hermiones looked at each other. Oh, said the one he'd been talking to all term. Oh, said the one from the floor. They stared at each other with the fascinated horror of people discovering a very specific kind of mirror. You're in Ravenclaw, Harry's Hermione said. You're in Gryffindor, the other said. Does that happen a lot? Ron asked Harry. First time, Harry admitted. Hermione Granger, said Ravenclaw Hermione, extending her hand to Gryffindor Hermione with the decisive pragmatism of someone who has decided that marveling at this is less interesting than dealing with it. Hermione Granger, said his Hermione, shaking it. How extraordinary. You said that, said the other. Did I? Not out loud. But it's what I'd have said. Harry looked at Ron. Ron looked at Harry. We should sort this out before the professors arrive, Ron said, with the practical wisdom of someone who has 6 siblings and knows that the details of any incident become extremely important in retrospect. He was right. McGonagall arrived 2 minutes later, followed by Snape, followed by Quirrell, who was doing an excellent job of performing innocent shock at the sight of the unconscious troll. Harry watched Quirrell's performance with flat awareness and said nothing. McGonagall looked at the troll, at the wall, at the crack in the floor, and then at Harry with an expression that was complicated by the effort of reconciling 11-year-old student with the evidence in front of her. Mr. Odinson, she said. Professor. You, yes. She looked at the troll again. She looked at the wall again. That was, extremely reckless. I was aware of the risk, Harry said. I assessed it as manageable. And the 4 students you brought with you into danger? 2 were here to get the girls out, which they did. 2 were behind me, out of the troll's eye line. The risk was concentrated on me, which was manageable. He paused. I'll accept the detention. McGonagall made a sound that was clearly not a laugh suppressed with difficulty because she was a professional. 10 points to Gryffindor, she said. And a separate 10 for you, Mr. Longbottom, for rapid action under pressure. Neville blinked. He looked down at the girl he'd guided out of the bathroom, who was still holding his sleeve with one hand, and went pink. And you, McGonagall said to Ravenclaw Hermione, who was standing with the composed dignity of someone who refuses to be defined by having cried in a bathroom, are you a student here? Hermione Granger, she said. First year, Ravenclaw. I was separated from my house during the evacuation. McGonagall looked between the 2 Hermiones. Something briefly crossed her face that Harry would have described as cosmic bewilderment quickly concealed. Yes, she said. Well. Mr. Odinson, I will need your full account for my report. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I'll be there, Harry said. Quirrell had not moved from the doorway through any of this. He was looking at the troll, at the scorch marks on it, the specific quality of the burns, with an expression that was not the expected response of someone looking at a creature that had been approximately electrocuted. It was calculating. Recognition. Harry caught his eye. Quirrell looked away. The two Hermiones decided, by the end of the week, to be friends. Harry watched this happen with interest. They were similar enough to understand each other immediately and different enough to find each other useful, Gryffindor Hermione's warmth meeting Ravenclaw Hermione's precision at a productive middle ground. They had fierce, rapid conversations about subjects that most people found too dense to be conversational, and they both got that same focused look when something interested them, and they occasionally finished each other's sentences with the faint irritation of people who are surprised to be understood. Harry, for ease of distinction, thought of them as his Hermione and the other Hermione, then felt this was unfair to the other one, then settled on Hermione G, and Hermione R, for internal use, though it never became necessary to say out loud because context was almost always sufficient. Hermione R was interesting to him for a specific reason. She was the one who noticed things about the castle that others filed under atmospheric. The third-floor corridor, she said one afternoon in the library, dropping into the chair across from Harry with a book and an expression of controlled urgency. The one that's forbidden. There's a specific kind of magical pressure coming off it. I've walked past it twice and it's unmistakable. Not standard warding. Something alive under it. Cerberus, Harry said. She stared at him. How do you, Dumbledore told me. Three-headed dog, guarding a trapdoor. The stones underneath. She sat back. And you're just going to, what? Wait. For Quirrell to make his move. Harry looked up from his book. He's been blocked by the dog all term. Whatever Voldemort is instructing him to do, he needs to get past it first. When he tries, I'll be there. Hermione R studied him. She had a different quality of assessment than his Hermione, sharper in certain ways, less personal, more structural. You're using yourself as a redundant defense, she said. I'm using myself as the actual defense, Harry said. Dumbledore's layers are good, but they're designed for a student-level adversary. Voldemort is not a student-level adversary. And you are not either, she said, not as flattery, just as calibration. Correct. She was quiet for a moment. I want to help. I know. Harry closed his book. What do you know about the stone's properties? Her eyes lit in the specific way both Hermione's eyes lit when they were being given academic permission to go deep on something. She reached into her bag and produced a notebook. For the next 2 hours, Harry learned more about the Philosopher's Stone than Dumbledore had told him, which was either evidence that Hermione was very good or that Dumbledore had been selective. Possibly both. The Quidditch match happened on a Saturday in November, under a sky that had been building weather since the previous evening. Harry had not gone out for the Quidditch team. He had no particular objection to it, but it had seemed like an odd allocation of time given everything, and he told Oliver Wood as much when Wood had appeared at his elbow during the second week of term with the hungry look of a team captain who has just seen something that might win him a championship. I don't need to be on the team, Harry told Wood. You'd be the best seeker this school has seen in a generation, Wood said. Probably, Harry agreed, without particular ego. I still don't need to be on the team. Wood had looked deeply wounded and departed. He attended the match as a spectator, in the stands with Neville and Ron. Hermione was beside him, watching with the expression of someone who has read about Quidditch extensively and is now encountering the gap between the theoretical and the practical. The Ravenclaw-Gryffindor match was good, fast and physical and loud in the way that Quidditch was always loud. It was during the second quarter that Harry felt it. A pulse. Small, almost negligible, easily mistaken for the general magical ambient noise of the stands. But he'd been monitoring this frequency for 2 months and he recognized the specific flavor of it, dark magic, moving. Not close. Not the troll in the corridor closeness. Somewhere in the castle. He stood. Where are you going? Hermione asked. Back in 20 minutes, Harry said. Stay here. She stood up. I'm coming. Hermione, you said stay here to the other Hermione last week and she came anyway. I'm going to come anyway too. We might as well go together. Harry looked at her for 1 second, and then they went. The castle was empty during the match, every student and most professors outside in the stands. The corridors had that deep quiet that only appears in buildings temporarily abandoned, a held-breath quality. Harry moved quickly through it, following the pulse, and Hermione kept pace beside him without asking questions until she needed to ask one. Where is it going? Third floor, Harry said. Not the corridor. The staircase that runs parallel to it. Why that staircase? Because the dog can be calmed by music, there's a trapdoor beneath it, and if you were going to approach it quietly, that's the angle you'd use. He turned a corner. Someone's been researching the same things we have. The staircase was empty when they arrived, but the magic on the floor near the corridor door was disturbed, the ambient enchantments that protected the area had been moved through, recently. Harry crouched and pressed his palm to the stone. Someone passed here in the last half hour, he said. Quirrell? Hermione asked. Possibly. He straightened. Or someone else with an interest in the stone. He thought about Snape, because he'd been thinking about Snape, because Snape's behavior had a specific quality of watchfulness that went beyond pedagogical. We'll know by the end of term. The match will finish soon. Harry, Hermione said, in a different voice. He turned. She was holding her wand and looking at the corridor door, which was ajar. Through the gap, in the flickering torchlight, a sliver of enormous brown paw was visible. The dog's asleep, she said. Yes. Someone opened that door. Yes. Harry looked at her. The stones below it. The traps below the trapdoor would take someone 20 minutes minimum to work through. They haven't had 20 minutes. He made a decision quickly. We go in. We see what they've triggered and reset it. We're 11, Hermione said, not as an objection but as a factual statement she was including in her assessment. I'm aware, Harry said. All right, she said. Lead. The dog, enormous, three-headed, breathing the deep regular breath of something that had been given a powerful sleeping enchantment, did not stir as they crossed the room. Harry moved past it with the steady respect you extend to dangerous things that are not currently threatening you. The trapdoor was open. He looked down. Dark, and below the dark, the specific damp smell of a protected space. Hermione conjured a small light, quickly, efficiently, no fuss about it, and Harry dropped through. They landed in something. Something soft and alive and immediately awake. Devil's Snare. Harry recognized it from herbology, long vines, light-sensitive, responsive to struggle. He was already acting before his feet hit it. He gathered light in his palm, not lightning but the warm gold of Asgardian sorcery that Frigg had spent years teaching him to produce at will, and the plant recoiled from it the way living things recoil from opposing forces. It released him immediately. Hermione landed beside him, saw the vines, and had the same response from the other direction. She already had a bluebell flame in her free hand, calmly placed, the snare retreating from it. They looked at each other. Somebody else got through this already, Harry said. The vines are disturbed that way. She pointed. Not toward the exit, toward another door. The next trap, Harry said. They moved through the corridor, winged keys released from an enchantment, evidence of a broomstick having been used, one key damaged. A giant chess game, pieces disturbed, a path bulldozed through to the other side by someone who'd clearly solved it via force rather than strategy. Not a subtle person, Hermione said, stepping over a fallen knight. Or someone under time pressure, Harry said. The troll chamber, passed out, already dealt with. Then the fire chamber, logic puzzle solved, the correct bottle empty. Harry stopped. Someone's been through everything, he said. All of it. Before us. The last chamber is through there, Hermione said. She was looking at the door at the far end of the fire chamber with an expression that was very composed and very alert. Is it Quirrell? Harry felt it then, the dark magic pulse, close now, unmistakable. And beneath it, colder and older and specifically familiar, the resonance of the soul fragment in his scar responding to something on the other side of that door. Yes, Harry said. And Voldemort. Hermione breathed out slowly. Okay. You should go back. You should stop saying that, she said. I'm not going to. What's on the other side of that door? The mirror of Erist, Harry said. Dumbledore had told him this. It shows you what you most desire. The stone appears in the mirror to someone who wants to find it but not to use it. Hermione processed this rapidly. So someone who wants to use it won't be able to retrieve it from the mirror. Correct. Which means Quirrell and Voldemort are in there looking at something they can't have. Yes. She almost smiled. That seems like a reasonable situation for us to walk into. Harry looked at her, this girl who had been in the wizarding world for less than 3 months, standing in the basement of a school facing what any reasonable person would describe as catastrophic danger, holding her wand steady and doing rapid magical calculus in her head. He thought, of everyone I've met in this world, she is the one who would be most at home in Asgard. Stay by the door, he said. If anything goes wrong, yell for you. Yes, she said. I was going to say use the fire bottle and block the passage. And then yell for you. Fine, Harry said, and pushed the door open. The chamber was large and cold and lit by the mirror of Erist standing against the far wall, its frame ornate and old, its surface not glass but something deeper, a surface that looked into rather than reflecting out. Quirrell stood before it, his hands at his sides, his posture rigid. Harry walked in. He did not announce himself. He crossed half the room before Quirrell turned, and when Quirrell turned, his face had the hollow, stretched quality of a mask being worn too long. The boy, Quirrell said. Not his voice entirely. Hello again, Harry said. You followed. Still Voldemort's cadence, cold and considering, using Quirrell's throat the way you use a borrowed tool. Obviously. Harry looked at the mirror. In it, he saw, not what he expected. Not his parents. Not Asgard or Thor or Frigg's workroom. He saw himself, standing exactly as he was standing now, and in his hand was nothing. He was simply there, himself, whole. The mirror showed him what he most deeply desired, and what it showed him was the absence of what lived in his scar, the fragment, gone, himself complete. Undivided. He looked away from it quickly. You can't get the stone, Harry said. You know that. That's what the mirror's telling you. Quirrell turned back to the mirror with something desperate in the movement. There must be a way. There isn't, Harry said. Not for someone who wants to use it. Those are the rules. Dumbledore made them quite specific. He walked closer. But you knew that, didn't you? You came anyway. Because the alternative was going back and reporting to him, he nodded at the turban. That you failed. Again. Quirrell made a sound. Remove the turban, the cold voice said. Slowly. Quirrell's hands moved. They were shaking. The purple fabric unwound, coil by coil, and Harry stood and watched it without stepping back or shifting his stance, and when the back of Quirrell's head was revealed, the second face, pale and sunken and ancient, chalk-white with red eyes that had once frightened the world, Harry looked at it the way he looked at everything that tried to intimidate him. Levelly. Directly. Without a flinch. Voldemort's face, pale and malformed and furious at the insult of its own existence, looked back at him. I know you, Voldemort said. I know what you are. Asgardian tricks and stolen power. A child playing at immortality. I'm not playing at it, Harry said. I was given it. There's a difference. The red eyes narrowed. Given it. By Odin. By Asgard, Harry said. The realm itself. Because apparently I was ready to receive it. He paused. That must be extraordinarily frustrating. You've spent your entire life trying to steal what I was simply handed. The fury in those eyes was very old and very deep. It was the fury of someone who has made every sacrifice and taken every terrible path and still arrived second. Harry felt it, the specific quality of it, and he did not enjoy it. He was not the kind of person who enjoyed others' pain, even enemies, but he also didn't soften his voice. I have a piece of your soul in my head, Harry said quietly. You know that. You've always known that. Silence. You came here for the stone because you need a body, Harry said. I understand the desperation. I do. But you need to understand something, Tom. He used the name deliberately, and watched the red eyes react to it. I am going to remove what you put in me. And I am going to find every other piece of yourself you scattered across the world. And I am going to end this. Not tonight. Tonight I am going to walk out of here and let you sit with the mirror showing you what you cannot have. But I will end it. Voldemort looked at him for a long moment. And then, very quietly, you cannot frighten me. I know, Harry said. You're already afraid. He turned and walked back toward the door, and behind him he heard Quirrell scream, pain, surprise, a crash, and he turned just in time to see Quirrell stumbling back from the mirror with his hands outstretched, the stone apparently not manifesting regardless of how hard he grasped for it. Quirrell lurched toward Harry, hands raised, and Harry caught both wrists. The reaction was instantaneous. Where Harry's hands met Quirrell's skin, the dark magic that had saturated the man screamed against Harry's magic the way opposing poles of a magnet scream against each other, except louder, more physical, more total. Quirrell's skin blistered. He screamed, a real human scream this time, and fell. Harry released him immediately. Stepped back. Quirrell lay on the ground, the back of his head pressed to the floor, Voldemort's face visible and contorted and doing something Harry had never heard Voldemort do, something that sounded dangerously close to panic. His mother's magic, Voldemort rasped. It's still in him. Bound into him, he couldn't finish. Quirrell convulsed once, and then the form on the back of his head was dissolving, the cold presence in the room thinning and fraying and pulling apart at the edges, and the room filled with a sound like something ancient and furious being denied. And then it was gone. Dispersed, not destroyed, Harry knew, not truly, the soul doesn't destroy so easily. But fled. Scattered again. Quirrell lay still. Harry stood over him and felt his pulse. Alive, barely. He looked at the doorway where Hermione was standing with her wand raised and her expression doing something very controlled. He needs the hospital wing, Harry said. Right, Hermione said. And I need to speak to Dumbledore. Also right. They looked at each other across the cold chamber with the mirror of Eriste standing behind Harry showing him his own whole self, and the unconscious form of Quirrell between them. Are you all right? Hermione asked. Harry checked internally. The soul fragment was still contained, Frigg's enchantment holding. His hands were steady. The Asgardian warmth in him was bright and present and entire. Yes, he said honestly. You talked to Voldemort like you were discussing the weather, she said. He's not as frightening as he wants to be, Harry said. He's sad, mostly. Sad and furious and trapped. He moved toward the door. Come on. Harry. She caught his sleeve for a moment. What did the mirror show you? He looked at her. He thought about telling her, and then thought about what it would mean, the soul fragment, the secret he'd carried since he was 10, the piece of dark wizard nestled in his scar. Not yet. There were things that needed time before they could be said honestly. Something I'm working toward, he said. She studied him. Okay, she said, and let go of his sleeve. They left the chamber. Above them, the castle hummed with 300 years of accumulated magic, indifferent and patient. The fire in the doorframe flickered as they passed. Behind them, in the still cold room, the mirror of Erist stood and showed nothing. Dumbledore found them in the corridor before they'd gotten halfway to the hospital wing. He had the look of someone who has arrived at a destination and found the event both exactly as anticipated and considerably more than that simultaneously. He looked at Quirrell in Harry's arms. He looked at Harry. "The stone?" he asked. "Safe," Harry said. "It's still in the mirror. Quirrell couldn't retrieve it. Voldemort has fled, dispersed, not destroyed. He'll reconstitute somewhere. We have time." Dumbledore looked at him for a long, particular moment. "You confronted him directly." "Yes. And you are, fine," Harry said. "He's afraid of what I carry. The protection my mother put in me." He paused. "We need to talk. About the other Horcruxes." Dumbledore went very still. Around them, the corridor was dark and empty and the torches threw long shadows. "You know about the Horcruxes," Dumbledore said. "I know what the thing in my scar is," Harry said. "I've known for a year. And I know he made others." He met the old man's eyes. "Stop deciding how much to tell me. I just drove Voldemort out of this castle at 11 years old. Trust me with the information." Dumbledore looked at him. And whatever he saw, the complete, self-possessed steadiness of a boy who had grown up in the House of Gods and come into himself without anyone's plan for him, made something change behind those blue eyes. "Come to my office," Dumbledore said. "Both of you." "She's earned it," Harry said, meaning Hermione. "I know," Dumbledore said. "Miss Granger, I suspect you'll want your notebook." Hermione already had it out. Chapter 4, What the Mirror Kept. December arrived and Hogwarts exhaled. The tension that had built through October and November, subtle, atmospheric, the kind of pressure that lives in the walls of a place rather than in any one person, released itself into the cold air of the last week of term. Students flooded the corridors with an end-of-term energy that was half relief and half pure noise. Decorations appeared overnight, trees laden with real frost and conjured snow, the great hall ceiling cycling through winter constellations. Harry noticed the release in the castle and felt only partially connected to it. The term had ended a chapter, not a story, and his mind was already on the next one. Dumbledore had told him about the Horcruxes. All of them, or as much as Dumbledore knew, which Harry had quickly determined was more than the old man initially presented and less than what he was pretending to know comprehensively. They'd spent 3 evenings in the headmaster's office in early December, Harry and Hermione on one side of the desk, Dumbledore on the other, going through it with the deliberate patience of people who have decided honesty is the only viable strategy. Hermione had filled 6 pages of notes in the first sitting and then run out of notebook and borrowed one from a portrait. Voldemort had made 7 Horcruxes. Dumbledore suspected 4 locations. Harry had added a 5th, which Dumbledore had not known. He'd felt it, the resonance of a Horcrux at Hogwarts itself, somewhere in the castle. Old. Deep. Not the diary, which he knew about from Dumbledore's account. Something else. He hadn't told Dumbledore everything. Specifically, he hadn't told him about the soul fragment in his own scar. He'd sat in that office for 3 evenings and carried that information like a stone in his pocket and had not produced it, which he was aware was a choice with weight behind it. He trusted Dumbledore more after the honest conversations than he had before them. He did not yet trust him with the scar. He'd written to Odin. The response had come through Frigg, a long letter in her careful hand, warm and precise simultaneously, which was entirely her, and at the bottom in Odin's briefer, more direct script, "We know. We have been preparing. Come home for the break and we will discuss it properly. Bring your findings." Oh, Harry had read this and felt the specific unwinding of tension that only happened when he was in direct communication with Asgard. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it until it loosened. He was going home for Christmas. Thor had already sent a separate letter, 6 pages long, describing in enthusiastic and only partially coherent detail the specific ways in which he had been worrying about Harry for 4 months and how the fact that Harry had defeated Voldemort adjacent without writing to Thor first was a personal offense that he was choosing to frame as character development but reserving the right to revisit. Harry had written back 3 lines, "I'm fine. The situation is being managed. Stop worrying." And then, because he knew his brother, "I missed you too." On the last morning of term, Draco Malfoy appeared. Harry had been expecting this. In a loose way, Malfoy had been circling since September, not threatening, not quite, but watching with the precise attention of someone assessing something he doesn't know how to categorize. He was 11 in the way that some children are 11 and also carrying a framework 30 years old, the complete worldview of an inherited legacy pressed onto a person still being formed. Harry had no particular hostility toward him. He had no patience for the things Malfoy believed, but he understood that those beliefs had been handed to Malfoy, not chosen. He was eating breakfast alone. Most students had already left for the train, Hermione and Ron and Neville seeing him off from the platform while he took a later transport directly to Asgard via a specific arrangement Frigg had made with Heimdall, when Malfoy sat down across from him. Not aggressively. He sat down the way someone sits down when they've decided to do something and the doing of it is costing them some pride, which made Harry revise his read of the situation immediately. "Odinson," Malfoy said. "Malfoy," Harry said. A pause. Malfoy looked at his plate. He had the fine-boned, composed face of someone who had been taught that expression was a weakness, and beneath that composure there was something working, something calculating, and beneath that, Harry thought, something genuine and not entirely comfortable. "What happened in November?" Malfoy said. "In the castle. The night of the Quidditch match." Harry waited. "I was on the 3rd floor," Malfoy said. "I wasn't, I didn't know what was there. I heard something, a door, and I looked." He stopped. "I saw Quirrell. I saw," he stopped again, and this time the stop was different, the stop of someone who has been carrying something they haven't been able to tell anyone. "I saw something on the back of his head." Harry looked at him steadily. "How long ago did you see this?" "Beginning of October," Malfoy said. Harry absorbed this. "And you told no one?" "I told," Malfoy's jaw tightened. "I wrote to my father. He said to stay out of it. That certain things were in motion and I should mind myself." He looked up. His gray eyes were doing that complicated thing again, the thing Harry had noticed all term, the gap between what Draco Malfoy had been told to be and what was actually there. "My father's he has views. About the Dark Lord's return. He's a Death Eater," Harry said simply. Malfoy didn't deny it. This was notable. He could have, at 11, with his father's entire social framework backing the denial, he could have performed outrage and walked away. He didn't. He said staying out of it was the smart move. That the strong survive by choosing correctly. "And what do you think?" Harry asked. Malfoy looked at him. "I think I've been watching you all term," he said. "And you're the most powerful first year this school has seen in, my father said, centuries. And you could have been, anyone. You could have come here wanting the things I was told to want and you'd have been unstoppable at getting them." He paused. "But you didn't. And Quirrell is in the hospital wing and apparently Voldemort fled, and you," he shook his head. "My father's been wrong about several things. I'm not certain about all of them yet. But I'm beginning to be certain about some." Harry looked at Draco Malfoy across the breakfast table in the nearly empty Great Hall and saw something he hadn't fully expected, someone in the middle of choosing. Not chosen yet. Not committed. But in motion, which was the part that mattered. "When you're certain about more of them," Harry said, "come and talk to me. Not as an ally against your father. Not as a political choice." He held Malfoy's eyes. As a person making a decision about who they want to be. Malfoy's composure did something complicated. He picked up his fork and looked at his plate, and said, in a very flat, very deliberate voice that was trying hard to be disinterested, "My father's going to be furious about this term." "Probably," Harry agreed. "He's going to ask me what I found out about you." "Tell him the truth," Harry said. "That I'm not what anyone planned for." Something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite not one crossed Malfoy's face. He stood, straightened his robes, and said, in the tone of someone deliberately not making a gesture of goodwill, "Safe journey," and walked away. Harry watched him go and thought, Loki would find him interesting. Then he thought, that might be the most dangerous endorsement I could give anyone. Asgard in December had a specific quality. The light came in low and gold across the snow on the upper terraces, and the feast halls were warm with fire and the smell of pine wood and roasting things, and the sound of it all was the specific low roar of a large family in a large space, comfortable and loud. Harry crossed the Bifrost and felt the realm settle around him the way a familiar coat settles, and stood for a moment at the edge of the bridge just letting it. Thor was waiting. Of course Thor was waiting. He hit Harry with a hug that lifted him off the ground before Harry had said a single word, and Harry laughed, a real unguarded one, the kind that doesn't happen often, and grabbed his brother's arms and was set down and held at arm's length and inspected with the particular intensity of someone who has been worrying about structural damage for 4 months. "You're whole," Thor said. "I said I was whole," Harry said. "In a letter." "Letters lie." "I don't lie." "Letters might lie even when their writers don't." But Thor was grinning now, the big uncomplicated one, and he kept one hand on Harry's shoulder as they walked. "I've heard things. Asgard's ravens are everywhere. They say you fought Voldemort in the basement of the school." "I talked to him," Harry said. "Then his host body blistered when I grabbed it." Thor stopped walking. "He attacked you." "He tried. Mother's magic still in me." Harry kept moving. "Come on." Thor caught up with 3 strides, because Thor's stride was enormous. "Mother's magic. The protection from your birth mother." "Yes." "And it burned him." "Extensively." Thor was quiet for a moment with the specific quality of someone absorbing something that hits them in a place they weren't prepared to be hit. Lily Potter had never been abstract to them, Odin had made sure of that, told them enough, placed her memory with care in the frame of the family rather than in the frame of tragedy. Thor had grown up with a mother who was Frigg and the knowledge of a mother who had died to save the brother standing next to him. He'd never made either of these things awkward. He'd just held both, in the large uncomplicated way he held most things. "Good," Thor said finally, in a voice that was very quiet for Thor. "Good for her." Harry looked at him. "Yeah," he said. "Good for her." The family dinner that first night was everything Harry hadn't known he'd been missing until he walked through the doors and was inside it. Frigg embraced him with a quality of relief that she didn't show in her face but that was entirely present in the grip, and Harry returned it with equal conviction and stood in it for a long moment before she stepped back and looked at him. She looked at his scar. She looked at his eyes. "The containment is holding," she said. "It held all term," Harry said. "Even when Voldemort was in the same room." "He was in the same room," she repeated flatly. "He looked significantly worse for it," Harry said. Frigg studied him and then put her palm briefly against his cheek. "Your mother's magic," she said softly, "is extraordinary." "I know." Odin was at the head of the table, they came to him, which was the tradition, Odin not so much presiding as anchoring, the way the largest rock in a river anchors the current. He looked Harry over with the Allfather's gaze, which missed nothing, and gave a single nod that meant several things simultaneously. Harry sat at his right. Loki was across the table. He was watching Harry with that precise, cataloging attention, his chin in his hand, a wine cup at his elbow, and he said nothing for the first 20 minutes of dinner, which for Loki was unusual restraint. Harry ate. He let the warmth of the hall work on him, let the sound of Thor talking and the smell of the food and the fire glow and the presence of these people who were home do what it did, which was remind him what everything was for. The Horcruxes, Loki said, when there was a gap in the conversation. Everyone looked at him. There are 7, Loki continued, as if he'd been in the conversation all along. Or were 7. The diary was destroyed years ago, according to my research. The scar one doesn't count as a deliberate Horcrux but functions as one. That leaves 5. He produced a piece of parchment from somewhere inside his jacket and laid it on the table. It had writing on it. A lot of writing, in Loki's small precise hand. I've been busy. Harry stared at him. You've been researching. I said I would consider helping, Loki said. Considering is an active process. Thor looked at the parchment. When did you? I have ravens too, Loki said. And library access. And an interest in dark magic that is purely academic and has never concerned any of you. He looked at Harry. Sit still, I'm going to tell you things. Harry sat still. He looked at his older brother across the table, the complicated, brilliant, sideways thinking person who had been watching him from the library since Harry was 10, and felt something settle. The ring, Loki said, pointing to the first line. A gaunt family heirloom. Voldemort made it a Horcrux and hid it in their abandoned house. The locket, Slytherin's locket, was in a cave, but it may have been moved. It was stolen at some point by a man called Regulus Black who died trying to destroy it and failed. He moved down the list. A cup. Hufflepuff's cup. Gringotts, almost certainly, Bellatrix Lestrange's vault, by my estimation. Then there's the diadem. Ravenclaw's diadem, Harry said quietly. Loki raised his eyebrows slightly. You know about it. I felt it in Hogwarts. Something old and deeply corrupted, somewhere in the castle. I didn't know what it was until just now. He looked at the parchment. Ravenclaw's diadem. Lost for centuries. Voldemort found it. In Albania, according to the most obscure records I could locate, Loki said. He returned it to Hogwarts. The room of requirement, I believe, the castle has a room that can be what one needs it to be, and if he needed to hide something, it becomes a room that hides things, Harry finished. He looked at Odin. I need to go back early. Before term starts. I need to find the diadem. After the holiday, Odin said. Father, after the holiday, Odin said again, and his voice was not loud and not harsh and was entirely immovable. You have been in Midgard for 4 months carrying the weight of this alone. You will eat and train and sleep for 2 weeks, and then you will go back. Harry opened his mouth. Closed it. Looked at his father's face. 2 weeks, he said. 2 weeks, Odin agreed. And in those 2 weeks, Loki will tell you everything he's found, and we will plan, and you will not carry this alone. Harry looked around the table. Thor with his arms crossed and his face set in the specific expression that meant he was about to agree with Odin regardless of his own feelings. Frigg with that particular calm that was not the absence of feeling but the presence of complete certainty. Loki with the parchment still extended, waiting. Fine, Harry said. 2 weeks. Thor exhaled like a man who has been holding his breath for 4 months. He trained every morning. The Asgardian training yards in winter were merciless and Harry found this excellent. He worked through combat sequences with 2 of the Einherjar who'd been assigned to him since he was 12, serious warriors with no interest in his pedigree, only in whether he improved, and he worked on his storm magic in the proving grounds, pushing the limits of range and control. By the end of the first week he could throw a focused bolt accurately at 300 meters, and Frigg had started working with him on something new, the combination. Your wand magic and your Asgardian magic operate on different principles, Frigg said, standing across the practice floor from him one morning. You've been using them in parallel. I want you to try using them in series. In series meaning the wand focuses and directs what the Asgardian channel amplifies, she said. You've been doing it instinctively in moments of pressure. I want you to do it deliberately. Harry picked up his wand. He thought about the moment in the chamber, the gold-core blue-edge bolt that had been louder than either source alone. He'd done it then without particularly thinking. He thought about the mechanism now, turned it in his mind the way you turn a key before putting it in a lock. He raised the wand. The bolt that came out of it was the right color in the wrong direction and blew a 3-foot hole in the wall behind Frigg, who had moved sideways with elegant foresight before he'd released. Better, she said, looking at the hole. Direct the Asgardian charge through the wand, don't just add them. You're stacking, not channeling. Again, Harry said. He did it 14 more times before he got it right. When he got it right, it was so precisely targeted and so intensely focused that it left a perfect circle in the stone practice block, clean as if cut, and the air around it shimmered with the specific heat of something that had been exactly the right temperature at exactly the right moment. Frigg looked at the circle. There it is, she said softly. How much more control can I develop? Harry asked. As much as you're willing to work for, she said. Which, based on observation, is quite a lot. He grinned. She smiled. In the evenings he sat with Loki and they went through the Horcrux research piece by piece. Loki had found things Harry hadn't expected, not just locations but histories, the way Voldemort had thought, the specific logic of a man who believed that distributing your soul across objects was a safeguard against mortality. Loki had read everything on dark soul magic he could find, which was extensive, because Loki's research habits were absolute. He thinks in terms of anchors, Loki said one evening. They were in the library, fire going, wine on Loki's side of the table and nothing on Harry's because Harry had never developed the taste. Each Horcrux is an anchor. Remove enough of them and the whole thing becomes unstable. How many is enough? Harry asked. All of them, Loki said. For a complete death. But each one destroyed weakens what's left. Makes him less. Harry looked at the fire. The one in my scar. Loki was quiet for a moment. He'd known about the scar fragment since Harry was 10, he'd been there when Frigg placed the containment, he'd asked intelligent questions about the mechanism. But this was the first time Harry had raised it directly in the context of the Horcrux conversation. There are only 2 ways to remove a soul fragment from a living host, Loki said. Destroy the host, or find a counter-mechanism specific to the original magical act that created the Horcrux. The original act was my mother's sacrifice, Harry said. Loki went very still. She created a magical signature in me, Harry said. Something that shouldn't exist by normal rules. And it's been in me alongside the Horcrux fragment this whole time. He turned from the fire to look at his brother. I think the sacrifice magic and the Horcrux magic have been in opposition this whole time. Frigg's containment enforced a boundary between them. But I think, if I could direct my mother's magic at the fragment specifically, you'd be weaponizing the protection against what it's been protecting you from, Loki said. Yes. Loki looked at him for a long moment. His face was doing that complicated thing it did rarely, genuine emotion breaking through the composed surface, getting a grip on his expression before he could smooth it back. That's either brilliant or catastrophic, he said. Probably both, Harry said. Which is why I'm telling you now. Before term starts. So someone knows the plan. Does Frigg know? No. Not yet. I wanted to, Harry paused. I wanted to think it through with someone who thinks sideways. Loki was quiet for a long moment. The fire cracked. Outside the library windows, Asgard sparkled in the winter dark. I'll model it, Loki said finally. The magical mechanics. I'll need a week. You have 5 days, Harry said. I go back before term. Then I'll need to work quickly, Loki said, and pulled a clean piece of parchment toward him, and that was that. The morning Harry left, Odin came to find him before sunrise. Harry was on the wall again, the upper garden wall, the one with 17 old scorch marks on it that no one had bothered to repair, because in Asgard the marks of learning were left where they were. He was sitting on the wall with his wand in his hand, running the new combined technique through its paces at low intensity, small precise bolts into the stonework below, getting the feel of it in his fingers. Odin sat beside him. Same as that last night, same wall, same comfortable absence of ceremony. Loki showed me his models, Odin said. He works fast. He works the way all my sons work when something matters to them, Odin said. Too fast and without enough sleep and with too much conviction. He paused. His models suggest your theory is viable. Dangerous, but viable. I know it's dangerous, Harry said. If you direct your mother's magic against the fragment and the interaction is stronger than predicted, it damages me, Harry said. I know. Loki ran the numbers 3 ways and the worst case is significant. He looked at his father. I'm going to do it anyway. I know, Odin said. I'm not here to stop you. He was quiet for a moment. I'm here because I want you to know that this plan, your plan, not mine, not Dumbledore's, not anyone's but yours, is the right one. And I want you to hear me say that. Harry looked at him. You were handed a piece of a dark wizard's soul before you were old enough to walk, Odin said. You've carried it for 11 years. You've been trained and loved and made into yourself, and through all of it that thing has been there, carried by you, and you have never, he stopped. The pause was the kind Odin rarely permitted himself. You have never let it touch who you are. Not once. In 11 years. His one eye looked at Harry with a directness that had all of Asgard's history behind it. I am proud of you, Haraldur. Not of what you can do. Of who you are. Harry held this. He held it the way you hold something you didn't know you needed until it was in your hands, carefully, aware of its weight, not wanting to put it down. I'm going to come back, Harry said. After. When it's done. Yes, Odin said. You will. Harry looked at the scorch marks on the wall. He thought about being 4 years old and Thor's voice saying do it again with that magnificent uncomplicated delight. He thought about Frigg's workroom and the candles and the lessons about magic and mercy. He thought about Loki in the library and the parchment and the sideways thinking that was the truest form of care his brother knew how to offer. He thought about Lily Potter and a choice made in a house in Godric's Hollow on the worst night of 2 worlds, a choice that had been living in him since before he could remember, not as a burden but as a gift he was still unwrapping. He stood. He picked up his bag. He looked at the realm spread below him, gold and deep and permanent. The Bifrost, he asked. Heimdall's expecting you, Odin said. Harry dropped off the wall. He looked back up at his father, sitting on the garden wall with the dawn of Asgard rising behind him, and he raised one hand. Odin raised his in return. Harry went. He arrived at Hogwarts 2 days before term started, in the grey January morning, the castle half empty and the corridors quiet. He carried his trunk to the dormitory, found it empty, unpacked in the comfortable silence, and then walked to the 7th floor. The room of requirement. He'd read Loki's notes on it. He understood the mechanism, walk past the wall 3 times thinking of what you need, and the room becomes what you need it to be. He walked past the blank stretch of wall once. Twice. On the 3rd pass, a door appeared. Inside was a room the size of a cathedral, floor to ceiling with the accumulated debris of centuries, furniture, crates, bookshelves, statues, broken implements, stacked trunks, towers of objects abandoned by hundreds of generations of students who'd wanted to hide something. It smelled of dust and old wood and something underneath that was deeply wrong, a corruption that Harry felt against his scar like a splinter against a wound. He walked into the room. Finding the diadem took 30 minutes. He tracked it by the dark magic resonance, moving through the stacks of abandoned things, following the pulse, the way you track anything in the dark, not by looking but by feeling the presence of it ahead of you, the air different around something that carries that much wrong. It was on a stone bust, perched on top of a stack of broken furniture near the back of the room. A delicate thing, silver, elegant, inlaid with blue stones, a tiara that looked like it had been designed for ceremony, for wisdom, for the person who wore it to be something elevated. Ravenclaw's diadem. On it, in Old Norse, wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure. Harry looked at it without touching it. He could feel Voldemort's work on it, the soul fragment bound into the metal, sealed with dark magic, sleeping the sleep of something that knows it's well hidden. Not anymore, Harry said aloud, to nobody. He didn't take it. Not yet. The plan for destroying it required specific preparation, the kind Hermione and Loki together had outlined, and that he wasn't going to rush. He looked at it for a long moment and then he pulled out his wand and cast a containment ward around it, Frigg's pattern, the same one she'd used on his scar, the one that suppressed the dark magic resonance and bought time. The room went quieter. The wrongness in the air diminished. He left the room and went to find the library, because Hermione Granger would be back in 24 hours and there were things he needed to have sorted out before she arrived, and she would want a complete picture. He owed her that much. He owed her considerably more than that, actually, but the complete picture was a start. Hermione arrived the afternoon before term with a new notebook and the alert energy of someone who has spent the holiday thinking and is ready to think more. She found Harry in the library with Loki's note spread across the table. She'd never met Loki but she'd seen his handwriting and had strong opinions about both its precision and its illegibility in equal measure. She sat down. She looked at the notes. She looked at Harry. "You found something," she said. "Ravenclaw's diadem," Harry said. "In the room of requirement. I've contained it." She looked at the notes again. "You went in without me. You weren't here." "I was here in spirit," she said, which was not what Hermione Granger usually said, and which made Harry look up at her properly. She was looking at the notes with an expression that was doing several things simultaneously, processing, adjusting, the usual rapid integration of new information, but underneath that there was something else. Something that wasn't analytical, something that was just feeling. She'd been thinking about this over the holiday. She'd been worrying, which she'd never say but which was there in the particular quality of her stillness. "I'm all right," Harry said. "I know," she said, with the slight edge of someone who has accepted this and finds it insufficient as a comfort. "Hermione." "I know, Harry." She looked at him directly. "I know you're all right. You're nearly always all right, which should be reassuring and is mostly just alarming." She opened her notebook. "Tell me about the diadem. How did you contain it?" He told her. She wrote. They worked through the notes together for 2 hours, building on what Loki had established, adding Hermione's knowledge of wizarding destruction methods, the specific interaction of fiend fire and Horcrux magic, alternative approaches that were less catastrophically dangerous. At some point Hermione appeared with her own notebook and pulled up a chair without asking, which was correct because she was needed and they all knew it. The three of them worked until dinner with the focused pleasure of people who are genuinely good at something and have found others who are good at it too. "The basilisk venom," Hermione said, halfway through the session. Both of them looked up. "There's a basilisk in the school," she said, with the composed delivery of someone who has decided that the best approach to alarming information is directness. "In the Chamber of Secrets. The evidence has been in the castle's magical record for 1,000 years, I found it in Hogwarts, a history volume 7, which almost no one reads because there are 6 volumes before it." She pushed her notes across. "If a basilisk fang carries enough concentrated venom to destroy Horcrux objects, and the basilisk is in the school, then we have a weapon on site," Harry said. "That we'd have to retrieve without dying," Hermione noted. "Basilisks are killed by the reflection of their own gaze," Harry said. He pulled her notes toward him. "Or by a rooster's crow. And I have some experience with things that want to kill me via direct eye contact." He thought about it. "Also I'm fairly sure I can find the chamber." "How?" Hermione asked. "I'm a Parselmouth," Harry said. Both Hermiones looked at him. "When did you discover that?" his Hermione asked. "About 40 seconds ago," Harry said. I just thought about what opening a chamber of secrets would require and realized I know how to do it, which means I've always been able to do it, which means the ability is probably from the Horcrux. He paused. Which is actually useful, for once. You're taking the soul fragment's properties and using them to find it, Hermione said. Her expression shifted. That's exactly what your plan is. On a smaller scale. Harry looked at her. Yes, he said. She held his gaze for a moment, and he could see her putting it together, not just the Parselmouth thing, but the larger plan, the one he hadn't fully explained. She was smart enough to have built most of it from context. He watched her arrive at it. The scar, she said. Yes. Your mother's magic directed against the fragment. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. She put her pen down. She looked at her hands. When? She asked. Not yet, Harry said. When I'm ready. When everything else is in place. I'm not doing it with 5 Horcruxes still intact in the world. He met her eyes. But eventually. Yes. She was quiet for another moment. Then, Loki's models suggest the interaction is manageable if the containment is lifted at a controlled rate. You read his notes. I read everything, she said, and picked her pen back up. All right. Then we need a plan for the other Horcruxes first. Methodical. One at a time. Methodical, Harry agreed. Starting with the diadem, Hermione said, practical and direct, because it's in the building. Harry looked between the two of them, the two brilliant, fierce, entirely unintimidated people who had decided, independently and without much fanfare, to stand beside him in this, and felt something that was not quite what Thor felt at the start of a battle, and not quite what Odin felt at the resolution of a long plan, but somewhere between the two. Something like being exactly where he was supposed to be. Right, Harry said. The diadem first. I'll need fiend fire or basilisk venom. I lean toward the basilisk. Because fiend fire is harder to control? Hermione asked. Because I want to meet the basilisk, Harry said honestly. Hermione stared at him. You want to, it's a 1,000-year-old magical creature living in a secret chamber under the school, Harry said. I have exactly no ability to find that uninteresting. Hermione closed her eyes briefly. She opened them. Of course you don't, she said. Outside the library windows, Hogwarts sat in the January dark, the grounds white with frost, the lake a black mirror, the forest breathing quietly at the edges. Inside, the fire burned steady, and 3 11-year-olds with notebooks and a plan worked through the first chapter of what was going to be a very long story. Harry rolled up Loki's notes. He looked at the containment ward diagram Hermione had drawn, accurate to the millimeter, all her lines precise and certain. He thought about Odin on the garden wall in the dawn. You have never let it touch who you are. Not once. He put the notes in his bag. He stood, stretched, looked at the dark window. Dinner, he said. Obviously dinner, Hermione said, gathering her notebook. And tomorrow we go to the 7th floor. Tomorrow we go to the 7th floor, Harry agreed. They left the library in a group, their footsteps overlapping in the quiet corridor, the castle shifting gently around them, one staircase adjusting, as if clearing a path, as if the old building with all its history and all its magic had been paying attention and had decided, in its inscrutable architectural way, that it approved. Chapter 5, Thunder over Hogwarts. The diadem came down on a Tuesday. Harry had spent 3 days running the approach with both Hermiones, the specifics of fiendfire, why it was too unpredictable for a controlled environment, and the basilisk problem, which they'd been turning from multiple angles. The basilisk was the cleaner solution. The venom was targeted, the destruction was complete, and the creature was already here, which meant no retrieval operation, no theft from Gringotts, no spectacle. There was just the small matter of surviving the encounter. Harry had thought about this with the focused patience Odin had spent years building in him and arrived at a solution that was simple, which was usually how the good solutions worked. He could hear the basilisk. He'd confirmed this standing at the entrance to the bathroom on the second floor, pressing his ear to a sink and listening to the specific deep hiss that moved through the pipes like water through arteries. Parselmouth ability meant he could communicate with it. Communication meant he didn't have to fight it. He hadn't mentioned this reasoning to the Hermiones because they would have several comprehensive objections and he didn't want to debate it, he wanted to do it. Hermione found out anyway because Hermione always found out. "You're going to talk to it," she said, catching him in the corridor outside the second-floor bathroom on Monday evening. "Yes," Harry said. "A basilisk." "Yes. Which can kill you with eye contact." "I'll use a mirror," Harry said. He held up the compact mirror he'd borrowed from the Gryffindor girls' bathroom. "Indirect eye contact. See my own reflection, not its gaze." She looked at the mirror. She looked at him. "That's either extremely clever or the least reassuring thing I've ever heard." "Possibly both," Harry said, which was becoming a theme. "I'm coming with you." "Hermione, don't," she said, with a quality of finality that was quiet and total and reminded him very much of Frigg. "I'm coming. I'll stay behind you with my eyes shut. I know a petrification ward that will give us 3 seconds of warning if anything comes at us from the side. I've practiced it 200 times since Saturday." Harry stared at her. "Since Saturday?" "I had a feeling," she said simply. He looked at the mirror. He looked at her. "Fine," he said. "Tomorrow. After potions," she said. "We can't miss potions, Snape will notice and ask questions." Harry acknowledged this was correct. They went to potions the next morning, and after potions they went to the second-floor bathroom, and Harry opened the chamber the way it wanted to be opened, a specific hissing syllable against the right tap, the sink descending, the pipe opening in the way it had always been designed to, carved by Salazar Slytherin 1,000 years ago for exactly this kind of visitor. Hermione looked into the shaft. "It goes down quite far," she said. "Yes," Harry said. "And the basilisk is at the bottom." "Yes." "After you, then," she said, and held her wand up, and didn't look remotely like someone who was frightened, though Harry knew she was because he knew her by now well enough to see it in the particular stillness she held herself in when she was doing something difficult. He jumped. The chamber was old in the way that underground things are old, a different kind of old than Asgard, earthbound and damp, the stone walls carved with serpentine patterns that Harry could feel as language the same way he felt all language, instinctively. The air tasted of still water and something older underneath. Torches lit themselves as they moved through the tunnels, which was either the chamber recognizing a Parselmouth or just old magic responding to presence. At the end of the tunnel, the great stone door with stone serpents for handles. Harry hissed at it and it ground open, stone on stone, the sound filling the chamber with its own echo. The Chamber of Secrets was vast and greenlit and ancient, and at its far end, in the dark water that covered the floor in a shallow layer, something enormous moved. Harry raised the mirror. In its small surface he saw the reflection of the torchlit room and, at its edge, the movement of something that was quite a lot of snake. He spoke to it in Parseltongue, not thinking about what he was saying, just letting the language come the way it always came, a channel opening, a current finding its path. "I am the heir of the one who made this chamber yours," he said. "I do not come to command you. I come to ask." The movement stopped. A pause that filled the entire space. "You speak," the basilisk said. Its voice in Parseltongue was not the voice of a creature that communicated simply, it was old, resonant, structured, the voice of something that had been thinking in the dark for 1,000 years. "I do," Harry said. "The last to speak here commanded and threatened and reeked of broken soul," the basilisk said. "You do not smell of broken soul." "No." Harry kept the mirror steady. "I smell of storm, I think." "Storm and old sacrifice," the basilisk said. "And something else. Something the broken-souled one left in you." "Yes. A piece of him. That is why I am here." Harry kept his voice level, respectful. There is an object in this school that carries another piece of the same broken soul. I need to destroy it. The most effective method available is your venom. A long silence. You want me to give you a weapon? I want to ask if you are willing, Harry said. I will not take what is not offered. The water shifted. The enormous shape in the shadows adjusted itself. Harry kept the mirror steady and didn't look away from the reflection, watching the movement at the edges of the small glass surface. The broken-souled one promised me freedom, the basilisk said. He lied, as broken things do. He promised me work and purpose and then hid me here for decades with nothing to do and no one worthy of speaking to. A pause. What do you offer? Harry thought about this carefully. I offer truth, he said. I will tell you honestly what I know and honestly what I cannot promise. I cannot free you from this chamber tonight, I don't have the means. But I can bring you someone who does. My brother is a prince of Asgard. He could move the Bifrost to the coordinates of this chamber and take you somewhere the sun exists and the prey is worthy of you. Another long silence. You are not lying, the basilisk said, which was its own form of remarkable, a creature old enough to hear truth in the quality of a voice. I don't lie, Harry said. Then I will give you what you ask, the basilisk said. But I will hold you to your word, storm child. You can hold me to my word, Harry said. You won't need to. Behind him, Harry heard Hermione breathing, steady, controlled, her eyes firmly shut, one hand touching the chamber wall for orientation. She hadn't heard the conversation, Parseltongue was Parseltongue, it didn't translate, but she'd heard the tone of it, and the silence that followed, and was doing the remarkable thing she did in difficult situations, which was trusting him completely and quietly without making it into something. It's going to cooperate, Harry said in English. I gathered that, Hermione said. From the fact that we're alive. Keep your eyes shut. Obviously. The basilisk shed 3 fangs, they came away from the great jaw with a sound like drawn swords, enormous and curved and still glistening with venom at the tip. Harry levitated them into the metal case he'd prepared, the lead-lined one that Loki had specified in his notes, and sealed it. Thank you, he said in Parseltongue. Stormchild, the basilisk said. When you come back. Bring the prince. I will, Harry promised. He meant it. The diadem dissolved in under a second. Harry had brought it down from the room of requirement wrapped in the containment ward, set it on a stone block in an empty classroom, dismissed the ward, and touched the lead case to the silver metal of the crown. The venom did the rest, the Horcrux fragment inside screamed, that specific unnatural sound that dark magic makes when it comes apart, and then the diadem cracked and went dark and went still. Hermione let out a long careful breath. She wrote something in her notebook. That's 1, Harry said. That's 2, counting Voldemort's diary, she said. And the locket's been attempted. She looked at her notes. Regulus Black stole it but didn't destroy it. It's somewhere. The ring is in the Gaunt Shack. The cup is in Gringotts. She looked up. And the scar. I know, Harry said. In that order, she asked. He looked at the remains of the diadem, just silver and stone now, the corruption gone completely, nothing left but the object itself stripped of the darkness. Something about it felt like an answer. The ring first, Harry said. Then the locket. The cup requires more planning. And the scar last, Hermione said. Yes. She held his gaze for a moment. When Loki's model says the interaction is manageable with controlled conditions, she said carefully, does manageable mean what I think it means? It means there's a version where everything is fine and a version where it's significantly more difficult, Harry said. I intend to engineer the first version. And if you can't? Then I deal with the second version, Harry said. But I won't be alone for it. I have you and the other Hermione and Neville and Ron and Odin and Frigg and Loki and Thor, which is considerably more resources than anyone has a right to. She looked at him. You think about Thor a lot when you're listing support structures, she said. Not unkindly. Just observing. He's very loud, Harry said. Hard not to. She smiled, small, real, the kind that wasn't performed for a room. Write to him more, she said. He worries. You've never met him. His letters are visible from the other side of the table when you read them, she said. The handwriting's quite large. Harry laughed. It was the unguarded one again, the one that only happened around specific people, and Hermione looked pleased with herself in the way she rarely let herself look pleased with herself. I'll write more, he said. Good, she said, and closed her notebook. Thor arrived on the last Friday in March. Harry had not invited him. This was important context. He'd written more frequently, as promised, and his letters had included a reasonably complete picture of the term's progress, the diadem, the basilisk conversation, the ongoing Horcrux planning, and in retrospect he should have predicted what this information would do to Thor's ability to remain in Asgard and not come immediately to Hogwarts. He found out Thor was there the same way most people found out things at Hogwarts, someone told him in the corridor. Specifically, Neville found him at breakfast and said, "There's an enormous golden-haired man at the front gates who says he's your brother," with the particular composure of someone who has become accustomed to Harry's life containing things that don't fit normal categories. Harry went to the front gates. Thor was there, in Midgardian clothes again, his arms crossed, his expression a combination of "I am completely reasonable for being here and I am aware you may not agree." Behind him, sitting on a stone post with his arms folded and an expression of complete neutrality, was Loki. Harry stopped. He looked at Thor. He looked at Loki. He looked back at Thor. "Loki," he said. "I was bored," Loki said. Thor was going anyway. "I brought the basilisk solution," Thor said. "The coordinates. I spoke to Heimdall about the extraction. The Bifrost can reach the chamber if the signal is right." Harry stared at him. "You came to move a basilisk." "And to see you," Thor said, with the particular weight of someone for whom these two things are equally important. Harry looked at his brothers, the enormous golden one who managed to make genuine love look like a tactical maneuver, and the sharp-eyed dark one who managed to make genuine love look like academic interest, and felt the specific warmth of that, the specific simple rightness of family showing up without needing to be asked. "You cannot walk into the castle," Harry said. "Dumbledore doesn't know you're coming." "We brought a letter," Loki said, producing one from inside his coat. "From Odin. Very formal. Extremely authoritative. Dumbledore will enjoy it, it has a good seal." Harry looked at the letter. He looked at the gates. He made a decision. "Stay here," he said. "I'll be back in 20 minutes." He was back in 12. Dumbledore had read the letter, raised his eyebrows significantly, asked 3 questions, and said, in the tone of a man who has decided that the world is going to be what it is and he may as well engage with it directly, "I would very much like to meet the sons of Odin." The meeting between Dumbledore and Thor lasted 40 minutes, ran significantly over whatever time Dumbledore had allocated for it, and resulted in Thor telling the full account of the basilisk negotiation with the enthusiastic appreciation of a warrior who understands that talking your way out of a fight is the same skill as fighting your way out of a talk. Dumbledore listened, asked intelligent questions, and at the end of it said to Harry, "You negotiated with the Hogwarts basilisk." "Yes," Harry said. "The Hogwarts basilisk that has been a subject of legend for 1,000 years. We had a productive conversation," Harry said. "It's not particularly happy down there." Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment and then said, very quietly, "No, I don't suppose it is." A pause. "The Bifrost extraction. You intend to keep your promise to it." "I don't break promises," Harry said. "No," Dumbledore said. "I don't suppose you do." The meeting between Dumbledore and Loki was entirely different, shorter, quieter, 2 people across a desk who were each trying to determine exactly how much the other one knew and conducting this operation with elaborate courtesy. Harry watched from the side of the room and found it profoundly entertaining. Loki produced, at the end of the meeting, a piece of parchment with his Horcrux research, a different version than the one Harry had, more comprehensive, more annotated, the version you give to someone you've decided is worth giving it to. Dumbledore took it with both hands and looked at it for a long moment. "This is extraordinary work," Dumbledore said. "I know," Loki said pleasantly. "The location of the locket in particular, 12, Grimmauld Place," Loki said. "Currently in the possession of a house elf who doesn't know what it is. I can provide specific details." He paused. "In exchange for access to your restricted library section. There are 3 books in it that I want to read and your wards are too interesting to simply bypass without permission." Dumbledore looked at him. "You could bypass my wards." "Without permission," Loki said. A silence. Then Dumbledore reached into his desk drawer and produced a small silver key. He held it out. "The 3rd shelf from the left," he said. "The green-spined books." Loki took the key. He looked at it. He looked at Dumbledore with something in his expression that was, Harry thought, as close to genuine respect as Loki got in the first meeting. "The locket," Loki said. "House elf named creature. He thinks of it as his master Regulus's most important possession. You'll need to be careful about how you approach it." "I know creature," Dumbledore said softly. "Then you know it will require more empathy than force," Loki said, standing. He looked at Harry. "Your headmaster is sharper than expected." "I know," Harry said. "I've revised my read of him upward," Loki said, loud enough for Dumbledore to hear, and swept out. Harry met Dumbledore's eyes. The old man looked, for a moment, like someone who had been assessed and found the experience bracing. "Your family," Dumbledore said, "is extraordinary." "Yes," Harry said. "They are." The chaos started that evening. Thor, given free reign of the castle for the day while the basilisk logistics were coordinated with Heimdall, had spent the afternoon being himself at full volume. This had consequences. He'd found the Quidditch pitch first, which was inevitable. He'd watched a Hufflepuff practice session with uncontained enthusiasm, applauded the wrong things at the wrong moments, got into a detailed conversation with the Hufflepuff captain about aerodynamics, and by the time Harry found him he had somehow acquired a school broom and was airborne. "Thor," Harry said, from the ground. "This is excellent." Thor shouted, from approximately 400 feet up. "Come down." "In a moment." Thor, one moment. He executed a dive that made the Hufflepuff team collectively lose their balance on their own brooms, pulled up 6 feet from the ground, and landed beside Harry with the particular easy confidence of someone for whom the physics of flying are simply suggestions. "Wonderful," Thor said. "Your world has many fine things, Harry. You need to stop before McGonagall, Mr. Odinson," McGonagall said, from directly behind Harry. Harry closed his eyes briefly. "Both Mr. Odinsons," she added, which was new. Thor turned and gave McGonagall the full force of his attention, the warm, direct, completely undefensive openness that Thor brought to every interaction, which had the effect on most people of simultaneously disarming them and making them feel they were the most important person in any room. McGonagall, to her very significant credit, held her ground. "You are not a student of this school," she said to Thor. "No," Thor agreed. "I am Harry's brother. I am visiting for the day." The headmaster authorized a visit," McGonagall said. "He did not authorize flying." "I was not aware of that specific restriction," Thor said, with complete sincerity. "Now you are," McGonagall said. She looked at Harry. "Your brother is to stay on the ground for the remainder of his visit." "Yes, Professor," Harry said. She looked at Thor for a moment with the expression of someone deciding whether additional instructions are necessary. "You have excellent form," she said finally, as if she couldn't help it. "Reckless, but technically excellent." She walked away. Thor watched her go with enormous appreciation. "I like her," he said. "She's terrifying," Harry said. "Exactly," Thor said. The real incident happened at dinner. They'd been given seats at the Gryffindor table. Dumbledore had made the arrangement with the kind of deliberate public normalcy that said this is not unusual while making it clear that Dumbledore considered this absolutely unusual, and Thor had taken to it with the enthusiasm he brought to feast halls, which was complete. He ate prodigiously, talked to everyone within 6 seats in both directions, expressed genuine interest in the lives and opinions of fourth-year students who had not expected this evening to include a conversation with a 7-foot Asgardian. Loki ate precisely and said very little and noticed everything, which was his natural feast hall posture. The incident was Draco Malfoy. Malfoy had been watching the head table and the Gryffindor table all evening with the particular intensity of someone building a picture. He'd been building a picture of Harry since September, Harry knew, had been revising it continuously, was somewhere in the middle of a long internal argument that hadn't resolved yet. He got up from the Slytherin table during the second course and walked directly to where Harry was sitting, which took a specific quality of nerve, and stood there until Harry looked up. "Odinson," Malfoy said. "Malfoy," Harry said. Malfoy looked at Thor, who looked back at him with cheerful interest. "This is your brother," Malfoy said. Stating it, not asking. "Thor Odinson," Harry said. "Thor, this is Draco Malfoy." Thor extended a hand the size of a plate. Malfoy shook it. Harry watched him process the handshake, the specific experience of being on the receiving end of Thor's grip, which was always slightly more than expected. "Your father wrote to mine," Malfoy said to Harry, still standing. "After Christmas. About the events of November." "Odin wrote to Lucius Malfoy," Harry said. "He said," Malfoy stopped. He was holding himself with the composed precision of someone who has decided to do something and is in the process of doing it regardless of the discomfort. He said that his son was dealing with the matter of the Dark Lord and that any witch or wizard who wished to be on the correct side of the outcome should consider their allegiances carefully. Harry looked at him. "That sounds like my father, yes." "My father's allegiances," Malfoy said, in a flat, careful voice, "are not mine." The table around them had gone quietly attentive, not obnoxiously, but the way a room goes attentive when something is happening in it that carries weight. Harry put down his fork. He looked at Draco Malfoy, standing at the Gryffindor table in the middle of dinner in front of everyone, doing something that was costing him considerably more than he was showing. "Sit down," Harry said. "Have dinner with us." Malfoy looked at the table. He looked at Thor, who had moved slightly to make room with the natural ease of someone for whom making room is just what you do. He looked at Hermione, who was watching him with sharp, assessing eyes that were not hostile but were not willing to miss anything either. He sat down. Ron, across the table, said nothing. He passed the bread rolls to Malfoy without comment, which was, Harry thought, one of the kindest things he'd seen all year. Thor immediately asked Malfoy his opinion on broomstick aerodynamics, and the conversation moved. After dinner, Loki found Harry on the way out of the hall. "Walk with me," Loki said. They went up the marble staircase and along the first-floor corridor, and Loki talked without preamble, which was how he talked when something mattered enough to drop the performance. "I've been refining the model," Loki said. "For your scar." Harry waited. "The controlled conditions I described in my notes, I've found a more specific mechanism." Loki kept walking, hands behind his back, eyes forward. "Your mother's magic is not passive in you. It's dynamic, it responds to genuine emotional pressure of a particular kind. The warmth of it increases when you are with people when you are," he paused, and the pause was Loki working on language that he found uncomfortable. "When you are connected. When the protective bond is active. When I'm with people I care about," Harry said. "When the love that produced the original sacrifice is echoed in your present circumstances," Loki said, choosing the formal construction with the deliberateness of someone who has won. Harry looked at him. "You're saying the counter-mechanism works best when I'm not alone." "I'm saying that your mother's sacrifice was an act of love performed in connection, not in isolation, and the magic that it produced has the same quality." Loki finally looked at him sideways. "You cannot do this alone and have it work cleanly. The conditions require people present who mean something. Harry absorbed this. Outside the corridor windows, the grounds were dark, the forbidden forest at the edge of the firelight's reach, the sky overcast and holding rain. "You're telling me this now," Harry said. "Before you go back to Asgard." "I'm telling you this now," Loki said, "because when you do it, you need Thor there. And Frigg. And," he stopped. "Me, presumably, to manage the technical elements." Another stop. "I am saying this with full awareness that it will cause Thor to say the exact kind of emotional thing I find exhausting." Harry looked at his brother. "Loki." "Don't," Loki said. "I'm just going to say, don't," Loki said again, in the voice that meant he'd accepted the thing Harry was about to say and didn't need it said because having it said would require him to respond to it and he was not prepared for that this evening. Harry was quiet for a moment. "After the other Horcruxes," he said. "After the ring and the locket and the cup. When it's time, I'll send word." "I'll be ready," Loki said. "I know," Harry said. They walked back to the entrance hall in the specific comfortable silence that had been developing between them since Harry was 11 years old in a library being told uncomfortable truths by someone who thought sideways. The basilisk extraction happened at midnight. Harry had coordinates, and a Parseltongue signal to locate the chamber, and Thor with his hammer and a complete willingness to stand at the entrance of an underground chamber and be the most physically imposing greeting a 1,000-year-old serpent had ever received. Loki had the Bifrost calculation ready. He'd spent the day working with Heimdall on the exact geometric problem of threading a Bifrost beam into a sealed underground space without taking the castle's foundations with it. Dumbledore had given permission with the stipulation that he be present, which Harry had accepted. They went down, Harry, Thor, Loki, Dumbledore, through the bathroom pipe and the tunnels, and when the chamber door opened to Harry's Parseltongue command and the vast dark space opened before them, Dumbledore went very still in the way that people go still when they encounter something genuinely ancient. Harry walked to the center of the chamber. He spoke in Parseltongue. "I said I would return. I am here. And I brought the prince." The water shifted. The shape moved in the darkness, and then the basilisk emerged into the torchlight, enormous, scaled and green so dark it was almost black, its enormous head swaying, its eyes closed as agreed. 1,000 years of magic and solitude had made it something beyond what basilisks usually were. It was remarkable. Thor, to his immense credit, did not flinch. He stood at Harry's shoulder and looked at the basilisk with the full open attention he gave to anything worthy of it. "Tell it," Thor said quietly. "I told it you were coming," Harry said. "I said you take it somewhere the sun exists." He looked at his brother. "Can you?" "Heimdall has coordinates for a valley in northern Scandinavia," Thor said. "Remote. Prey rich. The local population believes in the old stories. It will be unmolested." Harry turned back to the basilisk and translated this carefully. The great head swayed as it listened. "A valley," the basilisk said. "With sun." "With sun," Harry confirmed. "And worthy prey. And no human wizards to command you or hide you." A long silence. "The broken-souled one," the basilisk said. "You will destroy what he put in the world." "Yes," Harry said. "I will." "Then I am ready," the basilisk said. "Storm child. Take me to where the sun is." Harry looked at Loki. Loki was already holding the device he'd constructed for the Bifrost signal, small, brass, precise in the way all Loki's constructed things were precise. He set the coordinates. He looked at Harry. "Signal Heimdall." Harry pulled the communication stone Odin had given him, a small smooth thing that connected directly to the Bifrost, and pressed it. The beam came through. It was narrow, precisely targeted, threading through the stone above them with surgical accuracy, and when it hit the basilisk, the great creature rose slightly, the light surrounding it, and Harry watched, standing in the Chamber of Secrets in the basement of Hogwarts with his brothers at his shoulder and Dumbledore behind him, as a 1,000-year-old creature was finally taken somewhere it deserved to be. The light closed. The chamber was empty. The water on the floor was still. "You kept your promise," Dumbledore said quietly. "Yes," Harry said. The old headmaster was looking at the empty chamber with an expression Harry had not seen on him before, something beyond calculation, beyond planning, something that was just feeling. "In 50 years of working against Voldemort and his legacy," Dumbledore said, "I have never seen anyone treat a creature he imprisoned as something worth an apology." "It wasn't his creature," Harry said. "It was just something he used." Dumbledore looked at him. "The ring," he said. "The gaunt shack. I know where it is." "So do I," Harry said. "From Loki's research. I had planned to retrieve it myself this summer," Dumbledore said. "It is heavily trapped. I expected," he paused. "I expected to be the one to attempt it." "You shouldn't go alone," Harry said. "The traps are layered. You'd get through most of them, but the outer one has a specific magical signature I recognize from the dark arts of the 1940s, Dumbledore said. "Yes. I believe I would have managed it." Another pause. "But managed it alone and likely with injury." "We'll go together," Harry said. "When the term ends. Before the summer's out." Dumbledore looked at him. And in the look there was something Harry had been waiting for, without knowing he was waiting for it, the complete absence of the managing quality, the positioning quality, the quality of someone moving pieces. Just a man who had been fighting a long fight and had just been joined by someone worth fighting beside. "Yes," Dumbledore said. "Together." Loki left the next morning. He stood at the front gates with his coat on and his parchments under his arm and looked at Harry with the expression that meant he'd finished what he came to do and was not going to make a production of leaving. "The model is solid," he said. "I know," Harry said. "Don't do it before the other Horcruxes are destroyed." "I know, Loki. And keep the containment ward active. Don't let Dumbledore examine the scar until you're ready." "I know." Loki was quiet for a moment. "You have everything you need," he said. "Technically." He looked at Harry, and the look was Loki's version of something that other people said in words that he was never going to say in words. "Don't be reckless." "I'm rarely reckless," Harry said. "You talked to Voldemort at 11 and went to visit a basilisk on your own and recently sent a 1,000-year-old magical creature via Bifrost from the basement of a school," Loki said. "You are frequently reckless." "I prefer decisive," Harry said. "Of course you do," Loki said, and walked through the gate, and Harry watched him go with the specific warmth that Loki would absolutely be offended to know he generated. Thor was harder. He stood with Harry for 20 minutes after Loki left, not saying much, just standing beside him in the cold spring morning. The grounds were starting to turn green again, the last of the frost retreating from the edges of the lawn. Somewhere across the grounds, students were heading to morning lessons. "The scar thing," Thor said eventually. "Yes," Harry said. "Loki explained the mechanism to me last night." Harry looked at him. "In detail," Thor said. "Very technical detail that I followed about 40% of." He paused. "What I followed is that it will be difficult. That there is a version where it is very difficult." "Yes," Harry said. "And you are going to do it regardless," Thor said. "Yes. Because you are you," Thor said, "not as a complaint. Just as a fact. The way you state the weather." "Because I'm me," Harry agreed. Thor was quiet for another moment. The morning light came across the grounds in long gold lines, the way morning light comes in Asgard, and Harry thought this was probably not a coincidence. The light was light, it went where it went, the similarity wasn't meaning, was just the universe being consistent with itself. Then Thor put his arm around Harry's shoulders, the full weight of it, the specific solid warmth of his older brother who was the first person to call him his, and held him there for a moment that was not brief but was not long enough. "When you send word," Thor said. "You'll be there," Harry said. "Before you finish sending it," Thor said. Harry laughed. The unguarded one. He let himself lean into it for one moment, the arm around his shoulders, the gold morning, the smell of the castle grounds in spring. Then Thor let go, and picked up his bag, and walked to where the Bifrost signal point was marked at the edge of the grounds. He turned once and looked back. Harry raised his wand, and a small bolt of lightning ran down its length, gold and blue-white, the sound of a struck bell. Thor grinned, the full one, the magnificent one, and raised Mjolnir, and the Bifrost light came down and took him. Harry stood in the empty grounds and let the morning happen around him. After a moment he pocketed his wand, turned, and walked back up to the castle. He had classes. He had planning. He had a ring to destroy and a locket to find and a cup in a vault and a fragment in his scar, and all of it ahead of him in the sequential, manageable way that Frigg had taught him to think about large problems, one thing at a time, each step complete before the next. He walked through the front doors. The castle settled around him, warm and familiar, 300 years of other people's lives in its stones. He took the stairs at his usual pace. Hermione was waiting at the top of them with her notebook and the expression that meant she had 3 things to discuss and had been waiting for a reasonable window. "The ring," she said. "I've been reading about the Peveril family connection." "Tell me on the way to charms," Harry said. She fell into step beside him. She talked. He listened. The castle moved around them, the staircases shifting, the portraits watching, the morning light coming in through the high windows in long warm lines. It was a good morning to be alive, Harry thought. Even with all of it ahead. Especially with all of it ahead. Chapter 6, Haraldur Odinson, son of Asgard. The ring came down in July. Dumbledore had known where the Gaunt Shack was for years, a rotting structure in a forgotten corner of Little Hangleton, the last physical remnant of a family that had spent centuries believing their bloodline was the most important thing about them and had died largely alone because of it. The shack sat in a field of overgrown grass, listing slightly, the door hanging, and Harry had stood outside it on a grey July morning and felt the Horcrux from 30 feet away. It hit differently than the diadem had. The diadem's corruption had been old and deep, something that had been sitting in the room of requirement for decades, accumulating stillness. The ring's corruption was active, it reached, it pulled, it did something to the air around itself that made thinking near it feel like pushing through something thick. Dark magic with intention built into it, pointed outward, designed to affect. "Don't touch it directly," Dumbledore said beside him. He was wearing thick dragon-hide gloves and carrying a pair for Harry. "Even in its current state, I can feel it," Harry said. "It wants to be picked up." "Yes." A pause. "It shows you something when you wear it. Something you want." Harry put on the gloves. "The resurrection stone," he said. Loki's research had been thorough. The ring was also the second deathly hallow, the stone set into its band capable of summoning the dead. "You want to use it?" Dumbledore was quiet for a moment. "I did," he said. Past tense. Harry looked at him. The old man's profile was still in the grey morning, and there was something in it that Harry recognized from Odin on the garden wall, the weight of very old grief, carried with the particular dignity of someone who has chosen not to be defined by it but also not to pretend it isn't there. "Someone you loved," Harry said. "My sister," Dumbledore said. "She died a long time ago. I had a hand in the circumstances of her death, in the way that people have hands in things through carelessness and selfishness that they spend the rest of their lives regretting." He looked at the shack. "The ring calls to that. It knows exactly where to press." "It won't work on me," Harry said. He said it matter-of-factly, no performance in it. "I know who I've lost. But I had enough time with them, with Frigg, with Odin, with Thor, that I don't have the specific quality of unresolved grief it's looking for." He paused. "My parents died saving me. There's nothing unresolved about that. It was the most complete thing anyone has ever done." Dumbledore looked at him. "Yes," he said softly. "It is." They went in. The outer trap was exactly what Loki's notes had predicted, a curse layered into the door frame itself, subtle enough to miss if you were going quickly, specific enough to be debilitating if you triggered it. Harry disarmed it from outside, which Dumbledore watched with an expression of carefully controlled surprise, and then they moved through the shack's rotting interior to where the ring sat on a small stone plinth in the back room. Not hidden, exactly. Just placed. The way dark wizards sometimes left things in plain sight because the protective magic was the point. The traps on the plinth were Dumbledore's work to dismantle. He moved through them with a practiced precision that showed Harry the 50 years behind the man, the depth of knowledge, the complete command. Harry watched and learned and stayed ready at the edges of the room. The ring came free. Harry put it directly into the lead case, sealed it before the Horcrux could do anything else with the air in the room, and they left. Outside, in the grey morning, Harry opened the case an inch and used a basilisk fang, one of the three, carefully transported, on the ring through the gap. The sound came up through the case. Dark and splitting. Then nothing. He closed the case. He looked at Dumbledore. "Free," Harry said. "Free," Dumbledore agreed. He looked at the case for a moment. "You kept the stone intact." Harry had. He'd been careful about it, the venom targeted the Horcrux magic, not the object itself, and the ring's band had cracked but the stone had survived. He looked at it through the case's small window. A black stone with a fissure crack running through it now, the symbol of the Deathly Hallows carved on its surface. "It's yours if you want it," Harry said. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said. "Some things are more useful left alone." He paused. "But I appreciate that you offered." Harry pocketed the case. He looked at the shack one more time and then walked away from it, Dumbledore beside him, through the overgrown field in the grey summer light. "The locket," Harry said. "I have spoken to Creature," Dumbledore said. He was resistant. Then less so. A pause. "I told him about Regulus. About what his master had tried to do. About the courage of it." His voice was quiet. "Creature gave me the locket this morning." Harry stopped walking. "You have it." Dumbledore reached into his coat and produced a small leather pouch, which he passed to Harry. Inside, the locket, gold and heavy, the serpentine S of Slytherin's mark on its face, dark magic pulsing off it even through the leather. "Another fang?" Dumbledore asked. Harry opened the pouch, positioned the fang, brought it down. The locket screamed, louder than the others had, more personal somehow, as if this piece of Voldemort's soul was the most invested in surviving. The gold casing split. The darkness dispersed. 4. Harry and Dumbledore stood in a field in Little Hangleton with 4 Horcruxes destroyed between them, and the morning went on around them, grey and ordinary and entirely indifferent to what had just happened. "The cup," Harry said. "Gringotts," Dumbledore said. "In Bellatrix Lestrange's vault." He looked at Harry. "That one will require considerably more planning." "I know," Harry said. "I have thoughts." "Of course you do," Dumbledore said, and there was something warm in it, something that had been developing all year, the specific warmth of a mentor who has learned to trust the person he's mentoring in the real sense rather than the managed sense. "Give me until August," Harry said. He went home to Asgard for 6 weeks. Frigg knew the moment he walked through the Bifrost that something had shifted in him. She took one look at his face, at the particular quality of readiness in it, the thing that builds slowly in a person who has been moving towards something for a long time and can see it close, and said nothing about it at dinner. She waited until they were alone in her workroom, the candles going, the familiar smell of old books and good magic, and then she said, "How many left?" 2, Harry said. "The cup in Gringotts. And the scar." She looked at his forehead. The scar was what it always was, pale silver, lightning-shaped, entirely unremarkable to look at from the outside. Inside it, contained within her enchantment, the Horcrux fragment had been growing increasingly restless all year, as if it could feel the others being destroyed, as if the network of Voldemort's distributed soul was aware of itself being dismantled. "Is it active?" she asked. "More than it was," Harry said. "It's not breaking the containment. But it's pressing at it." She reached out and pressed 2 fingers to his forehead, over the scar. He felt her magic move through the enchantment, reading it the way you read a lock, testing the mechanism, checking the integrity. "Still sound," she said. "But you're right. It's different." She withdrew her hand. "We're running out of time before it starts affecting you." "I know," Harry said. "That's why the cup has to be this summer." "And then we deal with what's in your head," she said. "Loki's model," Harry said. "The controlled conditions." He told me," she said. "He also told Thor, who told me again in more emotional terms. Something that was almost a smile. Your brothers are very loud," Harry said. "Are very much in love with you," she said, simply. "Both of them. In their very different ways." She looked at him. "I want to examine Loki's model. Independently. Before we agree on an approach." "Of course," Harry said. She put her hand on his face again, both palms this time, framing it the way she had when he was small and she was explaining something important. "You know what I'm going to ask." "Whether I'm ready," Harry said. "Whether you're afraid," she said. Harry held this. He gave it the honest consideration it deserved, turning it over in his mind, checking the actual texture of what he felt rather than the surface performance of how he was presenting it. The scar. The soul fragment. The plan to direct his mother's sacrifice magic against a piece of Voldemort's soul while that piece was still inside him. "A little," he said. "Not of it going wrong. More," he paused. "I've carried it my whole life. I don't know what the absence of it will feel like. It's strange to be slightly afraid of something getting better." Frigg looked at him with those gray eyes that had watched everything and forgotten nothing. "That's honest," she said. "You taught me to be," he said. She pulled him in, briefly, a real embrace, full and warm, and Harry held it the way he held all of it, completely, without performance, with the specific gratitude of someone who has always known they were loved and still never takes it for granted. "I'll look at Loki's model," she said, stepping back. "We'll have a plan by the end of the month. Gringotts in August." The plan had been 3 weeks in the making and involved Loki, who had made a very convincing argument for why infiltration was preferable to confrontation, and Dumbledore, who had sufficient standing with the goblins to arrange a legitimate access request that would create the distraction they needed, and Harry, who had suggested the direct approach and been outvoted. The direct approach, Loki had said, in the tone he used when he found something both accurate and unhelpful, would involve you walking into Gringotts, declaring your intentions to the head goblin, and asking them to let you into Bellatrix Lestrange's vault to destroy dark artifacts. "Yes," Harry said. "That will not work," Loki said. "I could make it work," Harry said. "You could make a catastrophic mess work eventually," yes, Loki said. "I am proposing we not have the catastrophic mess phase." Harry had allowed himself to be outvoted, because Loki's plan was technically elegant and Harry respected elegant solutions even when they were less satisfying than direct action. The operation itself took 2 hours. Dumbledore managed the goblin diplomacy, he had genuine relationships there, built over 50 years, and the conversation about the war and Voldemort's artifacts and the need to remove them was one Dumbledore had clearly been building toward for months. The goblins were not cooperative out of charity. They were cooperative because dark artifacts in their vaults were a problem they hadn't known how to address, and Dumbledore gave them a face-saving way to address it. Harry went into the vault with a goblin escort and the third basilisk fawn. Bellatrix Lestrange's vault was exactly what he'd expected, dense with dark magic, accumulated over generations, the specific atmosphere of a family that had always believed their love of darkness was a distinction rather than a pathology. The cup was on a high shelf, small and golden, Hufflepuff's badger on its side. The Horcrux magic coming off it was thick and old. Harry used the fawn. The cup's scream filled the vault and then ended. 5. He walked out of Gringotts into the August sunlight with Loki at his shoulder and Dumbledore behind him, and the goblin at the door watched them go with the careful neutrality of a professional who has seen many things and categorizes today as among the more unusual. 2 left, Dumbledore said. 1, Harry corrected. Voldemort himself. He's a Horcrux by default, what remains of his soul sustains what remains of him. But the soul piece in me, he stopped. I need to deal with that first. Before I deal with him. Dumbledore looked at him. This was the part he'd been told about, in stages, over the year, the scar, the fragment, the plan. He'd taken it with more equanimity than Harry had expected, which probably meant he'd suspected it for longer than he'd admitted. He'd also tried, twice, to suggest alternative approaches, and Harry had listened carefully both times and explained why Loki's model was correct, and Dumbledore had accepted this with the specific grace of someone learning when to trust another person's expertise. When? Dumbledore asked. Tomorrow, Harry said. He sent word to Asgard that evening. Not a letter. The communication stone, a short, specific message. Tomorrow. I need Thor and Loki. Frigg knows the plan. He pressed it and felt it go, the stone warming briefly and then going still. He was back at Hogwarts. Dumbledore had given him access to the castle for the summer. It was habit more than necessity, the place where he felt the pull of the problem, where the business of the wizarding world was located. He walked the empty corridors that evening alone, the castle quiet and breathing around him, no students, no hurry, just the old building and the summer light coming in long and gold through the windows. He sat for a while in the Gryffindor common room, the fire down to embers, the room smelling of old parchment and stone. He thought about Hermione and Ron and Neville, all home for the summer. He'd written to all 3, shorter letters than he should have, the kind you write when there's too much to say and the moment isn't right yet. He thought about Malfoy, who'd written once over the summer, a brief, carefully worded note that said nothing directly and everything indirectly, and which Harry had answered with equal care. He thought about Lily Potter. He did this deliberately, turning her memory over in his hands the way you turn a stone you've been carrying, not painfully, not with loss, but with the specific act of looking at something that mattered. She had chosen. Absolutely, freely, with full knowledge, she had placed herself between her child and an ending, and what she created in that moment had been living in Harry ever since. Not as a burden. As a gift. The purest magic he'd ever felt, quieter than storms and deeper than any Asgardian enchantment. He was going to use it tomorrow. He was going to take his mother's love and direct it against the thing that had killed her. He sat with the rightness of this for a long time. Then he went to bed. They came at dawn. Thor first, naturally. The Bifrost light hit the grounds of Hogwarts before the sun was fully up, and Harry watched from the dormitory window as his brother walked through the early morning toward the castle doors. Behind him, a beat later, Loki with a case of his constructed instruments. Then the light again, and Frigg. Harry was down the stairs before she'd reached the door. He met her in the entrance hall, and she took one look at him with those gray eyes and said, "You slept." "Yes," he said. "Good." She held his face briefly, one palm to his cheek, checking the scar. "The containment is still sound. We have time to do this correctly." She looked at him. "Ready?" "Yes," he said. She smiled. "Then let's go find your brothers." Dumbledore joined them in the great hall. He'd been there already, which meant he'd come early, which meant he'd been awake for hours, which was Dumbledore's way of caring. The 6 of them sat around the long table in the morning quiet, Harry, Frigg, Thor, Loki, Dumbledore, and the ghost of every plan and every choice that had brought them to this specific morning. Loki opened his case and began setting out his instruments without preamble, because Loki's version of ceremony was precision. "Walk me through it again," Harry said. "You've heard it 12 times, Loki said. 13, Harry said. Loki looked up. The look said you're doing the thing where you check that you know something thoroughly enough that doing it feels different from knowing it. The look also said he understood this completely. The containment ward lifts in 3 stages, Loki said. Not all at once. We control the rate of exposure. As the fragment becomes active, your mother's protection, which is already present in you, ambient, always warm, will begin to respond to the dark magic stimulus. It will move toward it. Our job, he indicated himself and Frigg, is to ensure the response is directed specifically at the fragment and doesn't destabilize the rest of your magical architecture. The risk window is when the containment is at 50%, Frigg said. When the fragment has enough freedom to push but before the protective magic has fully oriented. That's the unstable period. How long? Harry asked. Seconds, Frigg said. 30, perhaps 40. In those seconds you will feel, she paused, choosing her words. Pressure. From both directions simultaneously. The dark magic and the light, both active in you at the same time. It will not be comfortable. It will be extremely unpleasant, Loki said, which was more honest. And after the 50% point? Harry asked. The protective magic should take over, Frigg said. It's stronger than the fragment, it always has been, that's why the fragment was contained rather than consuming. Once it's properly oriented, it should complete the process itself. Should, Harry said. Should, Loki confirmed. The models are solid. But magical processes of this kind have not been attempted before, which means the models are built from theory and inference rather than precedent. Right, Harry said. Which means, Loki said, that if something unexpected happens, I need you to stay present. Don't go passive. Don't let the pressure flatten you. Stay in it and we'll manage the unexpected from our end. Harry looked at him. I hear you. I'm serious, Loki said. This is the one time I need you to not be reckless. I need you to be exactly as controlled as I know you can be. Loki, Harry said. I hear you. A pause. Loki nodded once, which was as close to emotional preparation as he got. Thor, who had been sitting quietly beside Harry, unusual for Thor, notable, put his hand briefly on Harry's shoulder. Not the warrior grip this time. Just a hand. Present. I'm here, Thor said simply. I know, Harry said. Dumbledore was watching from across the table with his hands folded and his expression entirely still, and Harry thought that this was probably one of the most honest things the old man had shown him, not performing composure, actually feeling it. The equanimity of someone who has done everything he could and is now in the position of trusting. Begin. Frigg said. Begin, Harry said. He sat in the center of the great hall while Loki placed the instruments around him, 6 small brass constructions at specific angles, each one measuring a different quality of the magical interaction. Frigg stood at his right. Loki at his left. Thor directly behind him, which was where Thor always was, which was the right place for Thor. The wand was in his hand. He held it loosely. The combined magic, the storm channel and the wand focus, were both warm and present and ready in the way they'd been since he'd learned to use them together. First stage, Frigg said. He felt the containment ward begin to lift. It was a sensation he'd never experienced from this angle, he'd always felt the ward as an external structure, something Frigg had placed around the fragment. From the inside, with the ward beginning to recede, it felt like the removal of a filter. The fragment was suddenly more present. Not fully active. But there, in a way it hadn't been for years. It felt cold. Old. Furious in the deep, patient way that old things are furious, not hot anger, not the anger of the moment, but the accumulated fury of a consciousness that had been contained and diminished and denied for decades. I know you're there, Harry thought, not in Parseltongue, just in thought. Stay still. Second stage, Frigg said. The ward came down to 50% and Harry felt it, the thing Loki had warned him about, both directions at once. The fragment pushing outward, cold and reaching. And underneath it, woken by the stimulus, his mother's magic pulling inward, orienting, the warmth of it moving toward the source of the dark. Pressure was the word Frigg had used, and it was correct and also insufficient. It was like standing at the exact point where two waves met, each one huge, each one in motion, the point of their meeting a place of extraordinary and uncomfortable force. His breath came in one sharp controlled pull. He let it out slowly. Stay in it. He could hear Loki's instruments, small ticking sounds, readings being taken, Loki moving between them with rapid quiet purpose. He could feel Frigg's hands on his shoulders, her magic stabilizing the boundary between the fragment's activity and the rest of his magical structure. The fragment pushed. The warmth pushed back. And in the gap between them, in that 30 or 40 seconds of unstable contact, Harry felt something he hadn't expected. He felt what the fragment was. Not Voldemort, or not just Voldemort. He felt what it was to be a piece of a soul torn from itself, separated from the whole, placed in a container it hadn't chosen. He felt the wrongness of it, not as evil but as damage, something that should have been part of a coherent person, broken away and lodged in the wrong place and trying, with the blind persistence of a soul fragment, to survive. It made him think of Loki. It made him think of Draco Malfoy sitting down at the Gryffindor table. It made him think of everything in the world that acted from damage rather than malice, and how difficult it was to tell the difference from the outside. Tom Riddle, he thought. Not Voldemort. Tom. A child in an orphanage. A boy who found magic and thought it meant he was finally better than the life he'd been given. A person who made every terrible choice available to him out of a fear of mortality so complete it had consumed everything else. Harry didn't forgive it. He didn't need to forgive it. But he looked at it, directly, without flinching, and he said inside himself, quietly, with full conviction, "This ends now." The warmth surged. His mother's magic, Lily Potter's choice, 11 years old in him, patient and absolute and entirely intact, moved against the fragment with the specific quality of its origin. Not violent. Not triumphant. Just complete. The way a closing door is complete, the way dawn completing the dark is complete. Something being finished rather than being defeated. The fragment resisted. Then it didn't. Harry's scar burned, a single moment of pure white heat, and he kept himself in it, present, controlled, exactly as Loki had asked him to be, and the burning peaked and then was gone. The great hall was entirely silent. Harry opened his eyes. He hadn't realized he'd closed them. The light through the tall windows was the same gold morning light it had been. The fire in the hearths was the same fire. The table was the same table. Everything was exactly as it had been. He reached inward, carefully, the way you check a wound after it's been treated. He checked the place where the fragment had been, where he'd carried something cold and old and wrong for his entire life, so familiar he'd stopped registering it as foreign. It was gone. Not suppressed. Not contained. Gone. The space where it had been was just space. His own space, unoccupied, clean. He held this for a moment. "Harry," Frigg said. Her voice was careful, controlled, the voice of someone who is managing their own response until they're certain. "Yes," he said. His voice came out even. "It's done." He heard Thor's breath leave him, the specific release of held tension, the sound of relief at a physical level. Loki said nothing. But Harry heard one of the brass instruments being set down very carefully, very precisely, the sound of it placed with deliberate gentleness. Dumbledore was looking at him from across the table, and his expression was, not his headmaster's expression, not his mentor's expression. Just a man's expression. Old and quiet and moved. Harry looked at his hands. They were completely steady. He raised his wand, the holly and phoenix feather wand, the one that hummed with his mother's kind of magic, and a small bolt of lightning ran down it, gold at the core, blue-white at the edges, the combined magic of both his kinds, clean and bright and entirely his. He breathed out. "Right," he said. What followed was not what Harry had planned, because what followed was Thor, who had been controlling himself with extraordinary effort for approximately 45 seconds, putting both arms around Harry from behind and lifting him entirely off the ground in an embrace that compressed his ribs and expressed several things simultaneously that Thor could not say in words. "Thor," Harry said, from somewhere inside this. "Thor, I need my ribs." "They're fine," Thor said, not putting him down. "Thor." One more moment. "Thor," he was put down. Thor looked at him with that face, the one he only made for Harry, the one that had been there since the first morning in Asgard when a baby had grabbed his thumb and he'd said I'll protect him from everything with the earnest certainty of a 7-year-old who meant it absolutely. "You're whole," Thor said. "I'm whole," Harry agreed. And it was true, and it was different from all the times before when he'd said he was fine, said he was all right, said it was managed. This was different. He was whole in a way he'd never been, had never had reference for, and the sensation of it was stranger and quieter and more complete than he'd imagined. Frigg touched his face briefly. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Loki packed his instruments with his back to the room, which meant no one could see his face, which was exactly how he wanted it and which Harry allowed. Voldemort came in September. Harry had almost expected him to wait, to reconstitute more fully, to build resources, to plan with the careful patient intelligence that had always been Voldemort's greatest actual capability. But the destruction of the Horcruxes had accelerated something. 5 of his 7 soul anchors destroyed. The 6th, himself, no longer anchored by anything in Harry. He was, for the first time in decades, genuinely mortal, and whatever remained of Tom Riddle understood this at a level that bypassed strategy. He came to Hogwarts on the first Saturday of term, which meant he came to several hundred students, which meant Dumbledore had the castle evacuating within 4 minutes, which meant Hogwarts met Voldemort's arrival with the organized alarm of a place that had been preparing for this. Harry met him on the grounds. He wasn't alone, he'd specifically not been alone. Dumbledore was 20 feet to his left. Neville, who had asked to be there and whom Harry had said yes to without hesitation, was to his right. Hermione and Hermione were at the castle doors with wands raised. Ron and Neville's grandmother, who had arrived without explanation 2 days ago as if summoned by a schedule only she could read, were at the gates. Voldemort arrived in the specific way that Voldemort arrived places, with the theatrical darkness of someone who has spent decades cultivating an image of terror, the billowing black, the red eyes, the chalk-white face. He had a body now, not stolen, not shared, properly constituted from blood and dark magic and the sustained effort of a man who had refused to die for 40 years. He looked diminished. Harry saw it immediately, the diminishment was real, not performance. Without the Horcruxes, without the anchors, without the soul piece that had been living in Harry's scar giving him inadvertent power, he was less than he had been. Still dangerous. Still dark. But less. Voldemort looked at Harry and said nothing for a moment. "Then, you destroyed them." "Yes," Harry said. "All of them." "All of them," Harry said. "Except yourself." "We'll deal with that now." Voldemort looked at his scar. At the absence of the Horcrux resonance. His expression did something complex and swift and painful, the expression of a man who has just fully understood the extent of his own diminishment. "You were supposed to be afraid of me," Voldemort said. Not threatening. Almost wondering. "From the beginning. Every plan required you to be afraid." "I know," Harry said. "I never was." "A child," Voldemort said. "A boy from Asgard. You understand what you're doing. Ending the greatest magical intelligence of the century, I'm ending a frightened man who made every wrong choice available to him," Harry said. "That's what you are. Not great. Not terrible in the way legends are terrible. Just, very, very wrong, and now at the end of it." The red eyes looked at him. Behind the fury and the darkness and the sustained performance of something inhuman, Harry saw it, the thing he'd felt in the great hall when the fragment had let him see it. The damage underneath. Tom Riddle, all the way down. You pity me, Voldemort said. No, Harry said. I see you clearly. That's different. He raised his wand. I'm giving you one moment. Loki suggested I offer this and I agreed. He paused. Surrender. Come apart on your own terms rather than mine. Whatever happens to a soul after this, it's yours to face, but you can face it without the violence. A silence that stretched. No, Voldemort said. I know, Harry said. But I offered. The fight was not what the wizarding world would later describe it as, in the books and the testimonies and the accounts that circulated for years. They described a duel, two wizards, spells and counterspells, a long dramatic contest. They were working from what they could see and what they could see was incomplete. What actually happened was this: Voldemort cast the killing curse. It hit Harry's shield, not a spell shield, not a conjured barrier, but the ambient protective magic that had been in Harry since he was 1 year old, now clean and unobstructed and fully present, the thing that had burned Quirrell's hands, the thing that had sent Voldemort fleeing from the mirror room. Without the Horcrux fragment acting as insulation, without the complex interference of dark soul magic sharing space with light sacrifice magic, Lily Potter's protection met Voldemort's worst spell in its purest form. The killing curse went back. Not the same way it had gone back in Godric's Hollow, not a rebound, exactly, more a refusal, the green light meeting something it categorically could not proceed through and reversing its own course with the logic of something encountering an absolute. It hit Voldemort and it ended him. Not slowly. Not dramatically. Just ended. The way things end when the conditions that sustain them are gone. The red eyes closed. The form fell. The dark magic that had constituted his reconstituted body dispersed into the September air like smoke clearing, like weather changing, like the last note of something finally resolving. The grounds of Hogwarts went entirely quiet. A bird called, somewhere in the forbidden forest. A cloud moved off the sun. Harry lowered his wand. He looked at the place where Voldemort had been, and he felt, not triumph, nothing as simple as that. Something more like the completion of something. The closing of a long chapter. The end of a story that had started before he was born, in choices that other people had made, in a fear of death that had metastasized into everything it had touched. Dumbledore stood 20 feet to his left, very still. Neville was beside him, and Neville's face was doing something that Harry thought might take a long time to fully process, 10 years of a name and a title and the public weight of being the boy who lived, and now the actual end of the thing that had produced all of it, and Neville standing in the middle of it with his wand in his hand and his jaw set. Neville, Harry said. Neville looked at him. It's over. It's over, Harry said. Neville breathed out. Right, he said. It was the right word. It was the word you say when something finally closes. From the castle doors, Harry heard Hermione's voice, not calling to him, just talking to the other Hermione, both of them moving toward the grounds with purposeful steps and the expression of people who have been waiting for a specific outcome and are now moving to verify it and manage what comes next. Harry looked at the sky. September blue, deep and clear, the kind of day that didn't have the decency to be gray and suitable but was just itself, excellent and indifferent and ongoing. He thought about Odin on the garden wall. He thought about Frigg's workroom. He thought about Thor's laugh and Loki's parchment and the library and the scorch marks on the wall and a baby grabbing a thumb and a woman making an absolute choice on the worst night of two worlds. He put his wand in his pocket. The letters came for weeks. From the ministry, requesting statements and formal accounts. From wizarding historians and journalists and officials of every description. From witches and wizards who'd been living under the shadow of Voldemort's legacy for 30 years and needed somewhere to send a feeling of relief. Harry answered the ones that deserved answers and left the rest. He had neither the time nor the inclination to become a monument, and he'd said as much to Dumbledore, who had taken it with the wry understanding of someone who had spent his own life navigating the specific problem of the wizarding world's need for heroes. You realize, Dumbledore said, one afternoon in the headmaster's office in October, that you cannot avoid becoming significant in their history. I know, Harry said. Significant is fine. I just won't be their symbol. And the difference? A symbol is what they need me to be. Significant is what I actually did. He looked at the phoenix, who was watching him from his perch with those deep warm eyes. I did what needed doing. The story they want to tell about it is theirs, not mine. Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. James Potter would have been tremendously proud of you, he said. Lily, too. He paused. I knew them both well, once. I know, Harry said. Will you tell me about them? Sometime. Yes, Dumbledore said. I'd like that very much. He went home to Asgard for the half-term break. The feast that Frigg laid on was unreasonable in scale even by Asgardian standards, every dish Harry had ever mentioned liking, the great hall packed, the Einherjar celebrating with the wholehearted uncomplicated joy of warriors who understand that peace is worth celebrating loudly. Thor sat beside him and told the story of the basilisk extraction approximately 4 times in escalating versions, each one containing slightly more detail about Thor's personal contribution than the previous version. Harry let him. It was the tax on loving Thor, and it was extremely affordable. Loki sat across the table as usual, saying little, noting everything. But at some point in the middle of the evening he looked at Harry, directly, the complicated look, the one that Loki used when he had something to say and had been deciding how to say it for long enough that the saying was overdue. You're different, Loki said. Yes, Harry said. The absence of it. Yes. Loki looked at him for another moment. It suits you, he said, and looked away. Harry held that for a moment. Then he raised his cup. Odin, at the head of the table, caught the gesture. He raised his own. The feast went on around them, loud and warm and lit by fire, the smell of it and the sound of it and the presence of everyone who mattered filling the golden space of the hall. Harry sat in the middle of it and felt whole. Not just the absence of the fragment, something larger than that, more structural. The specific wholeness of someone who has found both halves of themselves and stopped needing to choose between them. Asgardian and wizard. Son of Lily and James. Son of Odin and Frigg. Brother to Thor. Brother to Loki. Prince of the realm. Boy from Godric's hollow. Not 2 separate identities held in tension. Just himself. Complete. He'd write to Hermione tomorrow. He'd write to Neville and Ron and Malfoy. He'd send a note to McGonagall about the second-year curriculum because he had thoughts. He'd follow up with Dumbledore about the Death Eater trials and the reform proposals and the 15 other things that needed doing in the wizarding world's reconstruction. He'd deal with the basilisk's welfare check. Thor had written that it was thriving in the Scandinavian Valley, which had made Harry genuinely happy. He'd do all of it. There was plenty of it. The story hadn't ended, it had just resolved one of its major chapters, and the chapters ahead were different, reconstruction instead of destruction, building instead of preventing, the specific complicated work of making things better rather than simply stopping them from getting worse. He was 12 years old and had all the time in both his worlds. He put his cup down. He looked at the fire. Frigg, beside him, leaned slightly in his direction, not speaking, just present. He leaned back. Outside the Golden Hall, Asgard spread in the autumn dark, all its history, all its depth, all its long patient permanence, and somewhere beneath it, far down the branches of Yggdrasil, the wizarding world was rebuilding itself in the way that worlds rebuild after long damage, slowly, unevenly, with the specific stubborn hope of people who have decided that better is possible. Haraldur Odinson, son of Odin and Frigg and Lily and James, Prince of Asgard, boy who had lived in more than one sense of the phrase, sat in the feast hall of his home and let the fire warm him. He was, on the whole, exactly where he was supposed to be. And he was, on the whole, entirely ready for what came next.